Maria Munoz, a young woman full of life, met a tragic end on September 22, 2020 that shocked her loved ones. The community was puzzled about who could have done such a terrible thing until they were shocked to discover that Maria's own husband was the unexpected suspect. As the details emerged, a web of secrets and deception was revealed, leaving everyone close to Maria shocked and saddened. In the bustling state of Texas, a shocking event unfolded that left everyone shocked. Maria Munoz, a young and lively woman full of dreams, met a tragic end that deeply affected her family and friends. The events leading to her unexpected death on September 22, 2020, left many stunned, especially when suspicions turned toward her own husband as the possible culprit. The story took a dark turn when toxicology reports found 7 different drugs in her system. Also, it's hard to believe Maria's journal was also the key evidence that helped catch the killer. It's crazy to think that something Maria wrote downplayed such a big part in solving the case. As the investigation progressed, secrets began to surface, revealing a side of the story that nobody saw coming. Maria Munoz, born on January 25, 1989, was one of 3 children to Marisol Rodriguez and Jorge Luis Munoz. Growing up in a vibrant and loving household in Puerto Rico, she faced early loss when her mother passed away. Also, around that time, she met Joel Pellet. Despite this hardship, Maria took on the role of caregiver for her siblings, Marisol Munoz and Peter Hernandez. Maria and Pellet first met in Puerto Rico, Maria's home country. At that time, Pellet was a nursing student with big dreams, and Maria was also a nurse. Pellet was 11 years older than Maria, but despite the age gap of 11 years, they both tied the knot in 2011. Later, they moved to Laredo, Texas, where Pellet secured a prestigious position as a nurse anesthetist at a local hospital, bringing in a substantial income. Their newfound financial stability afforded them a life of extravagance, filled with luxury cars and extravagant vacations. Maria Munoz, aged 31, lived in Laredo, Texas, as a full-time mother caring for her 2 young sons and her husband, Joel Pellet, aged 42. She left her job just to take good care of her children. Maria, a loving stay-at-home mom, cherished her 2 young boys. Every day she would take them to the park to play and read to them before bedtime, showing her dedication as a mother. While she enjoyed being at home with her children, she also found joy in playing the piano as a hobby. Despite her happiness as a stay-at-home mom, she always held on to her dream of returning to school and becoming a nurse again. For a long time, everything appeared to be going smoothly in their relationship. Pellet would often share pictures of his wife and children, proudly talking about how wonderful they were to his friends and colleagues. However, behind the scenes, a different story was unfolding. In the year 2018, shortly after Maria welcomed their second son, those close to Pellet began to observe a shift in his behavior. He underwent a noticeable transformation, losing weight and gaining muscle. He also became increasingly sociable with other women, displaying flirtatious behavior that did not align with the conduct expected of a married man. He began removing photos that featured his wife and children, instead opting to post pictures of himself alone. This change in his online activity gave the impression that he was living a single life without the responsibilities and commitments of a married man with a family. That same year, the colleagues observed Pellet becoming increasingly friendly with a surgical nurse named Janet Arredondo. Over time, it became clear that they both had started a secret relationship, carrying on an affair behind Maria's back. But in early 2020, Maria's worst fears came true. She found airline tickets that Pellet had bought for himself and Janet to travel to Europe. This discovery left Maria heartbroken and depressed. She had trusted him and thought their marriage was strong, but then she felt betrayed. Maria was devastated to learn that the life they had built together for 10 years was a lie. She didn't know how to move forward, feeling lost and alone. In the midst of her emotional breakdown, she sought help from a therapist to cope with the devastating truth about her marriage. The therapist prescribed medication to support Maria through her mental health struggles. Around this time, Maria turned to writing journals as a way to process her thoughts and emotions. Soon, things were getting worse between Pellet and Maria. So, on September 19, 2020, Maria went to Janet's house and saw Pellet's car parked in the driveway. She confronted them at the house, and when he came out, Maria made him choose between her and Janet. In answer, he said he'll choose Janet. During the argument, Janet called the police, but Maria and Pellet had left by the time they arrived. The police called Maria while she was driving with Pellet, and they heard him yelling at her in the background. When they got home, he became so angry that he punched a hole in Maria's car windshield, which was an alarming display of force and anger. The following morning, on Sunday, September 20th, Maria sent Pellet a text message expressing her intention to hire a lawyer to help sort out their situation. However, he replied suggesting that they handle things without involving lawyers, as he believed it would be too costly. Just a few hours after their text exchange, it seemed that he had a change of heart. He sent Maria an email expressing his deep sadness and inner turmoil. In the email, he conveyed his desire to sit down with Maria for an honest and non-argumentative conversation. This is what he said. "I am so sad I am hurting inside. I want to sit down with you to talk without arguing, a heart to heart." Maria replied to his email, and they both agreed to meet at approximately 5 p.m. the next night on Monday, September 21st. Before going to meet him, she was so nervous and then messaged her friend Yasmin Martinez that today they were going to meet. This is what she said: "I just ask if you can pray for me," but sadly, her prayers were not answered, and the meeting ended in a horrifying way. On September 22nd, 2020, Pellet dialed 911 in a panic, mentioning that his wife might have taken some prescription pills and was not breathing. Officer De La Cruz was the first who came to Pellet's house at around 1:40 a.m., and his body cam was also recording every detail. The officer found Pellet at the top of the stairs near the main bedroom. He was still wearing his green hospital scrubs and was doing CPR on his wife. Their 2 sons were sleeping in the rooms close by. As soon as the paramedics got there, they took over doing CPR on Maria. While first responders were working diligently to save Maria's life, another officer approached Pellet to inquire about the pills she had reportedly taken. Without hesitation, Pellet went to a nearby bathroom, searched through the medicine cabinet, and retrieved a bottle. He handed it to the officers, who later discovered it contained a prescription for clonazepam, a benzodiazepine medication used to manage acute anxiety, panic attacks, and sometimes epilepsy. Benzodiazepines, like clonazepam, work by slowing down the nervous system to induce a calming effect. Upon examining the bottle, the officer noticed that the pills were actually prescribed to Pellet, not Maria. Another detail that caught the officer's attention was that the pill bottle had been returned to the medicine cabinet. Typically, in cases of overdose, the pill bottle is found near the person. Afterward, Pellet was captured on body camera picking up the pill container from the floor and placing it in his pocket. De La Cruz questioned himself as to why he would retrieve the pills. Could he be concealing something? Another reason to suspect Pellet with De La Cruz also came across a needle catheter on the stairs in the couple's home. This seemed odd to him. Pellet and Maria had 2 young children, so finding a needle on the stairs raised questions about why it was there. This is not all. Investigators also uncovered more than just a needle. They also discovered syringes and IV equipment neatly packed in a medical bag. While this finding may seem ordinary given Pellet's profession as an anesthesia nurse, the presence of these medical tools outside a clinical setting raised intriguing questions for the investigators. Despite this unusual circumstance, Pellet informed the officers that Maria had been struggling with deep depression recently. He explained that her mental health had been deteriorating, leading her to take the pills in an attempt to cope with her overwhelming emotions. So, despite first responders' best efforts, Maria couldn't be revived. It's hard to believe, but by 3:58 a.m. that day, she was pronounced dead. After Maria was declared dead, officers took Pellet downstairs to the kitchen for additional questioning. He then explained to the officers that on that day, he and Maria had met for a conversation. After their discussion, they both got intimate and then he took a shower. Upon exiting the shower, he found Maria asleep. He went downstairs for a while, though the reason for this was not clarified. When he returned upstairs and approached Maria, he discovered she was unresponsive and not breathing. While talking, the officer noticed Pellet's strange behavior. He was sweating very badly and was literally unable to answer simple questions about the incident. The officer also observed that Pellet's level of sweating was noticeably higher than anyone else present, even the first responder who had been trying to save Maria's life for the past 2 hours. This made officers more suspicious of him. For further questioning, he was then taken by Sergeant Luis Mata to the police station. At the police station, Pellet was left alone in the interrogation room for a while before an officer came in. His every action was getting recorded on video. When officers watched the footage, they were shocked to see how Pellet suddenly went crazy. He started screaming, crying, hitting the walls, and throwing furniture around the room. He was being so loud and out of control that people in the hallway and other rooms nearby got scared hearing all the voices coming from his room. So, at 4 a.m., an officer, Sergeant Luis Mata, entered the room to talk to Pellet. During this conversation, he opened up once again about the events leading up to Maria's death. Shockingly, he also confessed to the officer that he had been involved with another woman named Janet. He revealed that he had actually left the family home 5 months earlier and was living with her at the time of Maria's death. He shared that he had been in a relationship with Janet for 2 years by then, and Maria had been aware of the affair for a while. According to him, on the night of Maria's passing, he visited the family home to have a conversation with her about their marriage. After their discussion, they got intimate. He said he thought Maria was asleep in her room, but only 10 minutes later when he returned to check on her, but tragically found her unresponsive. He later confessed to the officer that he gave Maria the medication prescribed to him, clonazepam, to help ease her anxiety and depression. However, he couldn't provide details to the officer about how much she had taken or how many pills were left in the bottle before she accessed them. Unfortunately, he was unable to provide any additional information to help clarify the situation. After all the questioning, he was released. So the next step was to do Maria's autopsy. The autopsy took place just 8 hours after her death, which was relatively soon after she passed away. This timing meant that whatever caused her death should still be detectable in her stomach contents. As the investigation into Maria's death intensified, the autopsy results delivered a shocking revelation. Contrary to initial suspicions, no traces of pills were discovered in her stomach. However, the medical examiner's report uncovered a shocking clue, a small, red mark on the inside of her elbow. What was more shocking was that it was a pinprick mark. The small red mark on her arm was concerning because it suggested she may have been injected with something. This unexpected discovery led investigators to explore the significance of this mark and its potential connection to her death. Soon, the investigators discovered another thing from Maria's house. So, what was that? A journal was found at Maria's place. As it was mentioned earlier, to cope with the anxiety and depression, she started writing a journal. And that journal helped investigators a lot to know who the culprit was. So what they found in that journal was really heart-wrenching. In that journal, she wrote her thoughts and experiences. Through her writings, the investigators discovered that Maria loved her husband and wanted to preserve their family, even though she recognized his wish to be with someone else. She wrote, "I want it to stop. My past haunts me, and I don't want to be sad anymore." In her journal entries, Maria detailed her heartbreak when Pellet left their Laredo home, leaving her to care for their 2 young sons. Her diary and recordings on her cell phone helped investigators uncover her husband's abusive behavior, documenting her emotional journey from grief to healing and a newfound optimism for the future. She also wrote in the journal, "My heart says one thing, my mind says something else. I am in this constant battle, tug of war. I want it to stop, but they won't. They keep me sad, and those are my tears. My future is foggy and unclear. My past haunts me, and my present is confusing. Lord, hear me cry. See my tears. Feel my pain. Bring me laughter. Bring me peace. Bring me happiness again. I don't want to be sad anymore. I don't want my heart to hurt. I don't want my mind to be in torture, please. I beg you, O Lord." The day before her untimely death, Maria Munoz wrote the following in her journal. "What is it that I want? Number 1, move forward." The entries in Maria's journal the day before her death showed her desire to live and move forward with her life. There was no mention of suicide or any plans to end her life. So after going through her journal, the investigators didn't think she had committed suicide. They needed more information to understand what really happened. So this was what happened next. Pellet's previous employer, Dr. John Hunsinger, who was an anesthesiologist, became aware of the autopsy findings. He contacted the lead detective De La Cruz, who was working on the case, and expressed his concerns. Dr. Hunsinger recommended that the investigators should conduct a comprehensive toxicology screening, so they did that. In January 2021, investigator Sergeant Luis Mata in De La Cruz received the long-awaited toxicology test results. Contrary to Pellet's claim of clonazepam, Maria did not have that drug in her system. However, the toxicology report revealed a shocking truth: the presence of 7 other drugs: morphine, Demerol, Versed, Propofol, Ketamine, lidocaine, and Narcan. These medications are commonly used in surgical procedures. Propofol and ketamine are used as sedatives and for pain management, often administered intravenously during surgical procedures. Most people cannot access these drugs easily, and even many nurses and other medical professionals may never come into contact with medications like propofol and ketamine unless they work directly in anesthesiology. The presence of propofol in Maria's body was the most shocking finding for the investigators. The investigators thought that Pellet is a nurse anesthetist, so he would have access to propofol based on his profession. When Dr. Hunsinger, who worked with Pellet and had experience using propofol, saw the amount found in Maria's system, he said it was the highest quantity he had ever encountered. Based on this, the doctor strongly believed that propofol was the specific cause of Maria's death, as Pellet would know the appropriate dosage to sedate someone or cause an overdose. Additionally, a small mark on Maria's arm indicated that she may have been injected with a substance. Investigators believed that, with the toxicological report, Pellet's suspicious behavior, and Maria's journal, they had enough evidence to arrest Pellet for the murder of his wife. So authorities soon got an arrest warrant against Pellet. De La Cruz wasted no time and went to arrest Pellet. Surprisingly, he did not resist arrest, almost as if he had anticipated and accepted his impending fate. Soon he was taken to the police station, marking the beginning of a new chapter in the investigation, as law enforcement officials prepared to question him again about the events surrounding Maria Munoz's tragic death. He had to face the consequences of his heinous act. So the trial started on March 21st, 2023. As the legal proceedings unfolded, both the prosecution and defense presented their cases. A prosecution team composed entirely of women, known as Maria's team, utilized Maria Munoz's journal entries to construct a compelling case against Pellet. This was done to illustrate to the jury the type of wife and mother Maria was. The prosecutors described Maria as an excellent mother who was caring and intelligent. They expressed feeling her vibrant spirit through the pages of her journal. During that trial, the prosecutors also suspected that Pellet first drugged Maria by putting some substances in her drink to make her sleepy. Once she was unconscious, he injected propofol into her arm. Prosecutors also believed that Pellet waited a long time before calling 911 so that the first responders would not be able to revive her when they arrived. The prosecutors stated that the journals helped them comprehend the challenges Maria faced, which in turn fueled their determination to seek justice in her case. During the final arguments, Pellet's lawyer, Roberto Bali, informed the jurors that his client wanted to work things out with his wife, Maria Munoz, before her passing. Bali reminded the jury about the medical examiner's report, which said Maria's cause of death was still unclear. He told them there was not enough proof to show Pellet was responsible for her death. Bali pointed out that Pellet had given Maria a drug called Narcan on the night she died, which is used to reverse overdoses. He even said both Pellet and Munoz struggled with drug addiction. Bali also argued that Maria Munoz willingly consumed the drugs without coercion, as there were no signs of force on her body. However, after investigating Maria's social circles, friends, and family, it became clear that she was not a drug addict, and Pellet was the only person who could have provided her with that substantial quantity of propofol. Authorities were also able to convince Pellet's girlfriend, surgical nurse Janet Arredondo, to testify against him. She revealed that he had admitted to her that he gave Maria something to calm her down and confirmed that he had brought drugs, including propofol, home from work. The jury took less than 1 hour to reach the verdict. At last, after a 9-day trial on March 30th, 2023, a jury reached a verdict, finding Pellet guilty of the murder of his wife, Maria. On April 27, 2023, Pellet received a life sentence for the murder conviction, plus an additional 10 years and a $10,000 fine for tampering with evidence. So, where is Pellet now? Joel Pellet is currently serving a life sentence at a Texas Department of Criminal Justice, facing the consequences of his heinous actions. His imprisonment stands as a symbol of accountability and a solemn tribute to Maria's life, ensuring that her memory is honored through the pursuit of truth and the upholding of justice. The motive behind the killing is unclear, but according to the prosecution, Joel Pellet's motive for killing his wife Maria Munoz was rooted in his desire to end his marriage and be with his girlfriend Janet Arredondo. Ultimately, justice had to be served, and the verdict ensured that Pellet was held accountable for his actions. The jury's decision brings some measure of closure to this tragic case, affirming that such heinous acts will not go unpunished. The conviction underscores the importance of upholding justice and sends a clear message that those who commit such crimes will face the full extent of the law. Jacqueline Jackie Vandegrift was born in Carrollton, Texas on March 4, 1992. She was the youngest of 2 daughters. Throughout her life, Jackie resided in the Colony in Frisco, Texas, where she was raised alongside her loving family. Before Jackie could walk, she learned to somersault, showcasing her natural talent for gymnastics. This early introduction fostered her passion for the sport and paved the way for her future success. Jackie's parents recognized her potential at just 3 and enrolled her in gymnastics courses. Over the following years, she honed her skills and eagerly participated in various competitions. Jackie reached level 5 in the Texas State Gymnastics Association. Those who knew Jackie described her as a warm and compassionate person. Jackie had a heart of gold and genuinely cared about the well-being of others. She was a loyal friend who encouraged her loved ones to be the best versions of themselves. Through words of encouragement or simply being there to listen, Jackie's company brought comfort and joy to those around her. Jackie's kindness extended beyond human relationships. She deeply loved animals, was a lifelong vegetarian, and believed in supporting pet adoption from no-kill shelters. Her compassion extended to all living beings. Jackie was passionate about reading. Her favorite book series was Harry Potter, and she would lose herself in the magical world of Hogwarts. In addition to reading, Jackie had a deep love for music. Jackie's taste was eclectic, ranging from Pink to James Taylor and Rob Thomas. One of her greatest passions was musicals, especially Rent. She would go to every performance of the musical whenever it was in town. After completing her high school education at Wakeland High School in Frisco, Jackie decided to enroll in the Paul Mitchell School for Cosmetology. She completed her training and earned her license as an esthetician. Determined to continue her education, Jackie enrolled at Texas Women's University and majored in nutrition and food science. She knew that good nutrition was crucial and believed everyone deserved access to proper nourishment. Jackie envisioned a future where she could educate others about the importance of eating well and empower them to make healthier choices. It seemed as if Jackie Vandegrift was destined for greatness. The college junior was on a path toward achieving her dreams and positively impacting the world. However, in the summer of 2016, a fateful encounter with an evil person would tragically end her life. On Wednesday, September 14, 2016, at around on, an officer with the Grapevine Police Department in Grapevine, Texas, received a disturbing call. The caller informed the officer that someone had found a body out by Grapevine Lake. Upon receiving the call, the officer immediately headed to the scene. Upon arriving, the officer walked into a wooded area and discovered a worn footpath. Following the path, he eventually came upon a burned patch of land. In this area was a plastic blue kiddie pool, and inside this pool was a body. The officer quickly realized that the body had been set on fire, leaving it burned beyond recognition. It was impossible to determine its identity as it lacked any distinguishing features that could identify whether it was an adult, child, male or female, or even the race of the victim, with the body's condition making it difficult to identify. The badly burned remains were transported to the medical examiner's office. Fingerprint identification would later reveal that the body belonged to 24-year-old Jackie Vandegrift. As detectives delved into Jackie's final moments, they learned she had last been seen in Denton, near College. Jackie had visited two bars, Fry Street Public House and Shots and Crafts. As detectives waited for the security footage from those establishments, Jackie's body was autopsied by the medical examiner. Jackie had been killed, dismembered, decapitated, and set on fire, and her body had been further mutilated after death. The most chilling discovery, though, was that her killer had removed her heart. News of Jackie's murder began to spread around Denton. The detectives received tips from people who claimed to have seen the fire at the crime scene with a suspicious man loitering around it. Detectives eventually managed to obtain the CCTV footage from two bars Jackie had visited around the time of her death. The first bar was the Fry Street Public House, where a man was seen entering the establishment at 7 p.m. He sat at the bar and was seen having a drink. 1 hour later, Jackie walked into the Fry Street Public House. While sitting at the bar, Jackie engaged in conversation with the bartender and this man. The footage captured their interactions and provided valuable insights into their possible connection. About 45 minutes after the footage showed Jackie entering the Fry Street Public House, she made a tweet on her Twitter account. It read, "Glad I decided to get off Tinder and walk to a bar." After spending significant time at the Fry Street Public House, Jackie and the man left the bar together. They headed to another establishment called Shots and Crafts, where they mingled with a group of women. Around 9:45 p.m., Jackie and the man left Shots and Crafts together. The detectives could track Jackie and the man using the CCTV footage. They followed their journey and discovered that the man had taken Jackie to his car. At the convenience store, Jackie can be seen in the man's vehicle, and at that point, all appeared okay. However, that was the last sighting of Jackie before her murder. The detectives spoke to the bartender from the Fry Street Public House. According to the bartender, Jackie came in looking to apply for a job when she had a friendly conversation with him and a male customer at the bar. However, the bartender admitted he had no further information regarding what became of Jackie and the male customer after they left his establishment. Next, the detectives found the woman Jackie and the man were seen on the security footage at Shots and Crafts. One of the women in the group mentioned that she had received a business card from the man Jackie was seen with. According to the woman, she had exchanged contact information with the man because he was a personal trainer and she expressed interest in fitness. Although it seemed insignificant initially, this seemingly trivial detail would prove to be a crucial breakthrough in the investigation. To their surprise, the woman still had the card in her hand and willingly shared the information with the investigators. The name on the card, Charles Bryant. By this point, the detectives had obtained footage from Walmart at 4 a.m. that showed Charles purchasing a shovel. The detectives conducted a thorough investigation into the true identity of Charles Bryant, the last person seen with Jackie before she was murdered. Their findings proved to be deeply unsettling. Charles Bryant, a 29-year-old man, lived approximately 20 miles away from Denton, but the city held a significant allure for him. What was drawing him there was the desperate attempt to rekindle his relationship ex-girlfriend Caitlin. Caitlin, a resident of Grapevine, was attending the University of North Texas. 3 months earlier, Caitlin met Charles Bryant at her home in Grapevine, Texas, when he came into the restaurant where she worked as a server on the day of her high school graduation. Charles was different from the high school boys Caitlin was used to. Firstly, he was in his late 20s, almost a decade older than Caitlin. Secondly, Charles was covered in tattoos, showcasing his muscular physique. He worked as a personal trainer and bartender, accumulating unique skills and traits that intrigued Caitlin. During the summer of 2016, Caitlin spent nearly every day with Charles at Grapevine Lake. Their attraction grew stronger with each passing day, and Caitlin was captivated by her older boyfriend's enigmatic nature. However, not everyone shared Caitlin's enthusiasm. As Caitlin's relationship with Charles progressed, her mother became aware of their significant age gap. Concerned for her daughter's well-being, she asked Caitlin to show her a picture of Charles. While initially willing to give Charles the benefit of the doubt, Caitlin's mother admitted to feeling an immediate unease upon gazing into his piercing eyes. It was as though she was staring directly at evil. Caitlin's mother, growing increasingly concerned for her daughter's well-being, voiced her concerns, urging her to reconsider her relationship with Charles. However, Caitlin dismissed her warnings, dismissing them as mere parental concerns. "He's so nice to me," Caitlin insisted, oblivious to the sinister nature lurking beneath the surface of her seemingly innocent attraction. Little did she know that her harmless romance was about to turn into a nightmarish ordeal. Initially, Caitlin was happy with her new relationship with her older boyfriend. However, as the weeks progressed, doubts began to surface and she started to question whether her mother was right. Charles seemed excessively narcissistic and manipulative, and Caitlin couldn't shake the feeling that he thought highly of himself. To make her feel bad, Charles would constantly remind her that she could never find anyone as good as him. By mid-August 2016, when Caitlin was preparing to move to Denton for her first year at college, she decided to break up with Charles. The red flags were becoming too numerous to ignore any longer. However, the following day, Charles showed up at Caitlin's home and begged her to get back together, claiming he was going to do better. Caitlin gave in and resumed their relationship. Within a week, Caitlin had moved out of Grapevine into Denton to start school. Once Caitlin moved away, she ended her relationship with Charles once and for all. However, Charles was not the type to take no for an answer. On August 24th, police found Charles on the University of North Texas campus while conducting a traffic stop because of the way he was driving. The officer thought it was a DUI, but Charles was not over the legal limit of alcohol. Nevertheless, he was charged with several outstanding warrants and let go. Several hours later, Charles returned to the University of North Texas and knocked on Caitlin's dorm room door, which he had somehow managed to locate. Caitlin called 911, and by the time the officer arrived, Charles had already vanished. When the officer questioned Caitlin, she explained that she had been sick of the way Charles treated her and spoke to her, prompting her to end their relationship. For Charles did not accept this decision. Taking Caitlin's concerns seriously, the police officer issued Charles a temporary no trespass order, banning him from the UNT campus. However, Charles was not deterred by this setback. He was determined to find a way to get to Caitlin, regardless of the restrictions placed upon him by the school. On August 31st, Charles stumbled upon Caitlin on her first day of a new job. Recognizing Charles, Caitlin asked him to leave. Caitlin scheduled a meeting with her manager to discuss the situation and to request that he bar Charles from entering the business. However, the manager informed Caitlin that this request was beyond his control. The incident at Caitlin's workplace forced Caitlin to quit her job. Despite Caitlin's efforts, Charles was determined to find a way to confront her. He would stop at nothing to exact his revenge and cause her further harm. The cycle of fear and intimidation continued as Charles' obsession consumed him, and Caitlin's life remained in jeopardy. In the meantime, Caitlin was residing on campus at UNT, which worried her mother greatly. Concerned for her safety, her mother pleaded for her to return home so they could protect her. However, Caitlin was confident in her decision to stay in her dorm room, feeling safe within the confines of the university. On September 6th, a chilling incident occurred when Charles reappeared at Caitlin's dorm on the UNT campus. As he banged on the door to her room, Caitlin feared the worst and sought refuge in her suite mate's closet. From her hiding place, she could hear Charles urging her to come out, telling her he had something for her. Caitlin's darkest fears began to manifest, and her mind raced with terrifying scenarios of what Charles might have in store for her. Terrified for her life, Caitlin made a split-second decision and called 911 while inside the Lacoste, talking in hushed tones, fearing that Charles could hear her. The dispatcher repeatedly requested that she speak up, but Caitlin was too frightened to speak clearly. Despite the dispatcher's attempts, Caitlin's voice remained barely audible due to the overwhelming fear she experienced. As time went on, the police arrived at the scene, but unfortunately, Charles had already fled the scene. However, he left a chilling reminder of his presence, flowers, and a handwritten 2-page letter addressed to Caitlin. The letter contained disturbing messages and further heightened the fear of the young woman. Minutes after the incident, officers managed to apprehend Charles outside campus, dressed in running clothes, as if he was exercising as a student. He was arrested for trespassing and released on bail a few hours later. Despite Caitlin's efforts to remove Charles from all her communication channels by blocking him on her phone, email, and social media, he continued to devise new ways to contact her. Charles created multiple accounts, ensuring that he maintained some form of communication with her. Recognizing that Charles's behavior had escalated, the police stepped in to assist Caitlin in obtaining a protective court order. On the very next day, she formally filed a petition for the order, which granted her legal protection from further harassment. However, even after his first arrest, Charles continued to try to communicate with Caitlin. These unwanted communications resulted in his second arrest for stalking, as he continued to violate the terms of the protective order. It was his third arrest within 2 weeks. Following his second arrest, Charles posted a $5,000 bond and was released from custody. While out on bail, Charles Bryant went to Fry Street, where Caitlin normally hung out. Detectives were positive Charles met Jackie Vandegrift there. Even though there was a lot of circumstantial evidence linking Charles to Jackie's murder, there was nothing physical. When the detectives helping Caitlin with her stalking case at UNT heard Charles was the prime suspect in a murder, they worried for Caitlin's safety. Caitlin said she was okay. Still, in the days following Jackie's murder, Charles sent her several photos, texts, and emails. On September 18th, the police arrested Charles for violating Caitlin's protective order. While Charles was in jail on those charges, the detectives hoped to find more evidence connecting him to Jackie's death. Detectives questioned Charles, and when shown a picture of Jackie, he said he saw her at the bar but knew nothing about her. At the same time as the detectives questioned Charles, investigators served a search warrant on his home. During the search, investigators found a large military-style knife in a Texas woman's university purse, which turned out to be Jackie's school purse. Furthermore, investigators found a kiddie pool missing from Charles's backyard that matched the one Jackie was found dead inside. The detectives consulted an expert with extensive experience and knowledge in dealing with prolific killers. This expert, who had worked with the Texas Rangers, was well-versed in understanding the mindset of people like Charles. They knew that men like Charles often had a strong desire to talk about their crimes. When the initial interview began, Charles denied having any recollection of Jackie. However, the expert believed that Charles was hiding something. The expert sensed that Charles did know what had happened to Jackie. To create a friendly and open atmosphere, the expert attempted to lighten the tension in the interrogation room. The expert made it seem like they were simply two buddies having a casual conversation at a local bar. By establishing a rapport, the expert aimed to ease Charles's mind and gain his trust. As they engaged in conversation, the expert began suggesting possible scenarios to see if Charles would take the bait. The expert tried to portray Jackie as an instigator, leading Charles on and causing frustration. Throughout the conversation, the expert used various tactics to see if Charles would react to certain prompts. However, the expert's approach was not without risk. If the expert pushed too hard or appeared insincere, he could lose Charles's trust and hinder the investigation. Therefore, the expert had to strike a balance, maintaining his friendly demeanor while subtly trying to entice Charles into confessing the truth. During the interview with Charles, the expert closely monitored his responses and mannerisms to understand his character better. Under the pretense of aiding Charles in recalling the events surrounding Jackie's admission, the expert conducted a brief memory exercise. To the expert's surprise, Charles's story began to change slightly. Initially claiming ignorance regarding Jackie's admission, Charles disclosed that he had spoken to her at the Fry Street public house when she went there to apply for a job. As the conversation between the expert and Charles continued, the expert decided to take a different approach. Ordering pizza, the expert hoped that the food might relax Charles, and the detectives could uncover the motive behind Jackie's murder. The detectives involved in the case believed that the catalyst behind Jackie's death was Charles's uncontrollable rage towards his ex-girlfriend, Caitlin. The interrogation lasted for approximately 3 hours, and during this time, Charles admitted to unintentionally killing Jackie during what Charles referred to as kinky sex. According to Charles, the incident took place in his car, and Jackie asked him to choke her with an oversized zip tie that he had in his possession. However, Charles insisted that the death was accidental. Charles claimed that neither he nor Jackie had tightened the zip tie. It had just happened. After the interview, Charles Bryant was charged with Jackie Vandegrift's murder. When Charles was charged with Jackie's murder, his ex-girlfriend Caitlin took to social media to look at Jackie's Facebook page and was shocked to see they were already friends. Suddenly, Caitlin remembered getting a friend request from Jackie's Facebook page on the day her body was found before Caitlin was aware of the case. Caitlin was positive that her ex-boyfriend Charlie and the suspect in Jackie's murder used Jackie's phone to friend request her. Furthermore, a tweet sent out from Jackie's account after her death which read, "Never knew I could feel like this," the police also felt came from Charles after he murdered her. One woman, Christy, was stunned to hear that Charles, whom she had met through a dating app the previous year, had been charged with murder. The Charles she knew was quiet and reserved, but during their brief time together, she observed several red flags that raised her suspicions. Christy claimed that Charles quickly became attached to her, and she eventually decided to end their relationship. However, Charles continued to pursue her, even professing his love for her desperately. This declaration came as a surprise to Christy, as she and Charles had never shared a kiss. Christy's profession, working with abused children, gave her a unique perspective and led her to recognize certain patterns in Charles's behavior. She suspected that he may have been a victim of abuse in his childhood, as she had seen similar patterns in some of her young clients. One day, Christy mustered up the courage to ask Charles if he had been abused as a child. To Christy's surprise, Charles admitted that he had experienced such trauma. However, the police found no verification of Charles's claims of abuse. However, Christy thought it was true that Charles was abused. She claimed because Charles was a nice man and she felt sorry for him, she stayed in touch, albeit at a distance, but never thought he was capable of murder. Because Jackie's autopsy provided few answers, such as her cause of death and where she was killed before she was dismembered and set on fire, the prosecution worried about providing a murder case. The autopsy results failed to provide clear insights into the circumstances surrounding Jackie's death, leaving key questions unanswered. Charles admitted to disposing of Jackie's body after she accidentally died during rough intercourse. During the investigation, Charles confessed to his involvement in disposing of Jackie's body. However, he pleaded not guilty to her murder. The prosecution sought Caitlin, Charles's ex-girlfriend, to testify about his stalking behavior and obsessive, violent tendencies, aiming to demonstrate a link between his rage towards Caitlin and his eventual murder of Jackie, an individual whom even Charles admitted during his interrogation bore a striking resemblance to Caitlin. Caitlin took the stand at trial, although without the presence of a jury. When faced with identifying Charles, she refused to look at him, expressing discomfort. However, when compelled to do so, she reluctantly pointed him out, stating that he had a smirk that sickened her. Following her testimony, Caitlin left the courtroom and broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the emotional impact. Ultimately, the judge ruled that Caitlin would be unable to recount the details of her relationship and subsequent breakup with Charles to the jury. In April 2018, 1.5 years after Jackie's tragic demise, Charles Bryant stood trial for her murder. However, Jackie's best friend found herself unable to bear the sight of Charles, choosing not to attend the court proceedings. The mere thought of having to confront him face to face was too overwhelming for her to bear. It was a painful reminder of the devastation he had caused to their lives. The Temple family, hailing from Katy, Texas, was well known and respected in their town, particularly David, an exceptional athlete who captained the Katy High School football team through an undefeated season in 1986. As the star linebacker and heart of the defense, David's skills earned him recognition far beyond the confines of the football field. David was a local celebrity in Katy. Everyone wanted to be his friend. As David's success continued, he decided to further his academic and athletic pursuits by enrolling in Stephen F. Austin State University in the fall of 1990. The university offered him a full scholarship to play football, and David eagerly accepted the offer. During his time at Stephen F. Austin State University, David's skills on the field were nothing short of extraordinary. His physical presence and relentless aggression earned him the nickname the Temple of Doom. During his time at the university, David crossed paths with Belinda Lucas. Belinda was a physical education major who worked as an assistant with the football program. David and Belinda's connection was instantaneous and quickly blossomed into a true love. Belinda was a charming blonde, and David couldn't help but be captivated by her beauty. From the moment they began dating, David was eager to spend every moment with her. To show his affection, he would leave heartfelt notes on her windshield whenever he saw her car on campus and would surprise her with roses. After 11 months of dating, David decided it was time to take their relationship to the next level. With great care and consideration, he asked Belinda's parents for their hand in marriage. Belinda's parents, impressed by David's genuine character and respectful demeanor, happily said yes. David was determined to propose to Belinda in the most romantic way possible. In order to create a perfect memory, he decided to take her out onto the football field. As they walked towards the 50-yard line, anticipation filled the air. David got down on one knee and asked Belinda to be his wife. Belinda couldn't contain her excitement as she happily agreed to be David's wife. In the fall of 1992, David and Belinda married in an intimate ceremony surrounded by their closest friends and family. After their marriage, David and Belinda decided to settle in Katy, Texas. Belinda pursued her passion for education by becoming a teacher at David's alma mater, Katy High School. David found his calling as a coach and teacher at Alief Hastings High School. As time went on, David and Belinda's desire for a family grew stronger. 3 years after their marriage, Belinda gave birth to their son, Evan. Becoming a parent was a moment of immense joy for both of them. According to David's loved ones, he was an exemplary husband. He supported Belinda in every aspect of their life, ensuring she had everything she needed. However, other people who knew the couple painted a different picture of their marriage. Some friends of the couple witnessed their interactions and felt David controlled Belinda. They heard him make derogatory comments about her body and the way she took care of their son and upkeep their house. According to Belinda's twin, who spent time with David and Belinda during the holidays, David made frequent jokes at the expense of Belinda's big butt. Additionally, multiple individuals reported that David referred to Belinda as fat and ugly and verbally attacked her family. He made derogatory comments about them, referring to them as crazy white trash, and he actively hindered Belinda and their son Evan from spending time with Belinda's family. David appeared visibly upset with Belinda's inability to shed the weight she had gained during her pregnancy with their son Evan. His frustration seemed to stem from his dissatisfaction with having a spouse who let herself go physically. However, despite David's less-than-ideal behavior, it was generally agreed that he genuinely adored their son and was a doting, loving father. Over time, David started to distance himself from his wife, Belinda. One day, David attended a high school reunion where he found himself reacquainted with an old flame. The following day, he informed a friend that he had hooked up with an ex-girlfriend during the reunion. David started to spend more and more time away from home. He told Belinda he was at happy hour with his fellow football coaches. However, in reality, David was frequenting exotic dance clubs where he would engage in casual encounters with other women. Belinda sat at home, feeling a sense of unease in her marriage. As she played with her son, she couldn't help but wonder if something was amiss. Belinda confided in her friends, expressing her suspicions that David might be cheating. However, she hesitated to believe these thoughts, knowing there had to be a reasonable explanation for David's increasing absence from home. However, when Belinda examined their credit card statements, she became concerned. She noticed a high number of charges from exotic nightclubs, which raised questions about David's activities. When she confronted him about these outings, he presented feeble excuses, which Belinda reluctantly decided to accept. In the aftermath of this incident, David told Belinda that he no longer wanted to share an account with her and instead opened his credit card. This development further heightened Belinda's concerns and left her isolated from her husband. By the summer of 1998, Belinda and David's relationship was strained, and the couple were fighting a lot. They went long periods without talking to one another, which added further stress to their relationship. One night, Belinda decided to confront David about their problems. She asked him if he still loved her, to which David responded with a vague answer, stating that he didn't know. However, by the next morning, everything had changed. David had had a change of heart. He told Belinda he did love her. When Belinda heard David's words, she was overjoyed. By January 1999, David and Belinda had seemingly repaired their relationship. Belinda discovered that she was pregnant with their second child, and to their joy, they found out they were expecting a baby girl. This news filled the couple with excitement and joy. On January 11, 1999, Belinda was 8 months pregnant with her and David's baby girl, and Evan, their son, was 4 years old. The day began normally. Belinda was teaching at KD High School when she got called to the front office to take a phone call. Evan's daycare center was on the phone, informing Belinda that he had a fever and needed to be picked up. Around lunchtime, Belinda drove to Evan's daycare center and brought him home. David arrived home about half an hour later, as Belinda needed to return to work because she had a meeting later that afternoon that she could not afford to miss. Belinda's meeting lasted until around 3:30 p.m., and she arrived home approximately 15 minutes later. When Belinda came home, she appeared to be extremely tired. At that time, Evan's fever had subsided, and David decided to take him out to do something to give Belinda some rest. David and Evan left the house at 4 p.m. and drove to a park located a few minutes away. However, they didn't remain there for long. David decided to continue driving to a larger park several miles away. Before heading to the larger park, David stopped at a Brookshire Brothers grocery store to purchase a drink for his son and cat food. However, by the time he arrived at the store, it was already after 4:30 p.m., and David changed his mind about taking Evan to the larger park. Instead, he decided to head back home. While driving home, David decided to make a quick stop at Home Depot to purchase brackets for shelving for the baby's nursery. The store's CCTV footage captured David and his son entering the store. David arrived home with Evan at 5:30 p.m. When David walked up to the back door, he noticed it was partially open and glass was everywhere. That sight immediately raised red flags, and David had a feeling that the house had been robbed. Thinking quickly, David picked up his son and ran to the neighbor's house, banging on their front door and shouting, "Let me in." The neighbor, hearing the commotion, quickly ran to the front door. David handed his son over to the neighbor and asked him to call 911 urgently. He explained that it looked as if his house had been burglarized. Worried about his pregnant wife, David left his son in the neighbor's care and rushed back to his home. As he rushed inside, he shouted Belinda's name, his voice filled with concern. He ran up the stairs and made his way to the master bedroom. In the master bedroom closet, David found Belinda lying in a closet. She was covered in blood. After finding Belinda's body, David called the police. 2 officers from the Harris County Constable's Office responded to 911 calls regarding a shooting. As they made their way to the scene, they were informed that a person had been shot. Upon arrival, the officers encountered a barrier in the form of David and Belinda's dog, Shaka. The dog, known for being vicious and protective, was barking and growling, preventing their entry. The officers quickly realized that they needed to find a way to gain access to the house, as someone inside had indeed been shot. However, Shaka's aggressive behavior was proving to be a challenging obstacle. They considered shooting the dog as a last resort, as they believed it would be their only means of gaining entry. Just as the officers were about to take action, David unexpectedly stepped out of the backyard. Calmly and firmly, he informed the officers that his wife Belinda had been shot and was dead inside. The officers ordered David to take control of his dog before they could enter the premises. David complied with the officers' request and placed the dog inside the garage. David was placed in a patrol vehicle as medical personnel and additional officers arrived. However, while in the patrol car, David started to act agitated. The officers explained that they needed to take him to the police station for questioning regarding his wife Belinda's death. During the interview, David talked about the moments leading up to when he discovered his wife dead in the closet. However, David acted irritated and aggressive. According to the detectives, David refused to look them in the eye, and he shook his body and bounced in the chair as he spoke. After 3.5 hours of questioning, the detectives still had no idea if David was a suspect in his wife's murder. His answers were inconclusive, and he was not cooperative, making it impossible for them to eliminate him as a suspect. When crime scene investigators arrived at David and Belinda's house, they were confronted with a gruesome sight. Belinda was found lying face down in the master bedroom closet with a gunshot wound to the back of her head. The injury to Belinda's head was not immediately apparent, as her long hair covered that part of the wound. To one of the detectives at the scene, it looked as if Belinda had been kneeling when she was shot. The clothes hanging in the closet were covered in Belinda's blood and brain matter. Belinda was fully dressed in jeans and a sweater, with her shoes still on. She also wore a watch, bracelet, necklace, and rings. On January 12, 1999, a medical examiner conducted an autopsy on Belinda, confirming that she had been shot by a 12-gauge shotgun, which fractured her skull. The medical examiner determined that Belinda had been killed sometime on January 11th, but was unable to identify a specific time of death due to the body's state of lividity after the medics removed it from the crime scene. Furthermore, the medical examiner noted that Belinda's unborn daughter would have died as a result of her gunshot wound to the head, but stated the death would not have been instantaneous. Crime scene investigators searched David and Belinda's house. The examination of their home revealed evidence indicating that the individual who committed the shooting had entered through the back patio door by breaking a panel of glass. However, as the investigator closely examined the broken glass on the floor, he noticed that the pattern was consistent with the window being broken while the back door was ajar. This finding raised suspicions about the circumstances surrounding the break-in. The investigators' analysis led them to the conclusion that if the back door had been closed when the glass was broken, he would have expected to see the glass scattered closer to the couch. However, the fact that the glass fragments were found in the living room suggested an alternative scenario. If the intruder intended to gain entry into David and Belinda's home, why would they choose to break the glass of an already unlocked and open door? Even though drawers were pulled out and some items were turned over in David and Belinda's home after a thorough investigation, nothing of value was missing. Belinda was found to have all her jewelry on, indicating that she was not targeted for her possessions. Furthermore, David's gold championship high school football ring was in plain sight on the dresser in the bedroom. Additionally, the television was left behind and still plugged in, contradicting the notion of a robbery. Given these observations, the detectives initially believed that whoever murdered Belinda had staged the crime scene to appear to be a robbery. However, upon further investigation, they realized that the motive behind the commission of this heinous crime was none other than the targeted killing of Belinda and her unborn child. the person who broke in did so solely to execute Belinda and her unborn daughter. The detectives examined David's alibi and reviewed security camera footage from Brookshire and Home Depot. This footage confirmed his presence at both locations at the time they believed Belinda was killed. As a result, the detectives temporarily placed David on the back burner while they turned their attention to other suspects in his wife's murder. When police first interviewed David on the night of Belinda's murder, he insisted that he had no knowledge of anyone who could have wanted to harm his wife. However, a few days into the investigation, after careful consideration, David shared with the detectives that he thought of someone who might have possessed a motive to harm Belinda. This person was their 16-year-old neighbor, Riley Sanders. Riley was not only Belinda and David's neighbor, but also Belinda's student at KB High School. Due to his consistent absence from her class, Belinda had approached his parents several weeks before her murder to discuss the issue. As a result, they grounded him. Another time, Belinda confronted Riley's mother and father after he left beer cans in her backyard. The detectives learned that Riley had access to his father's 12-gauge shotgun, the weapon used to murder Belinda. They also discovered that a group of Riley's friends had been involved in a robbery several weeks earlier, where several shotguns were stolen. During Riley's interviews with the detectives regarding Belinda's murder, he gave them an account of his day and stated that he had been in school. However, when the detectives checked his attendance records, they revealed that he had skipped class in the middle of the day. This discrepancy raised suspicions and led the detectives to investigate Riley's involvement in Belinda's murder. Once confronted with this evidence, Riley agreed to take a polygraph test, which he failed. Despite this, Riley maintained his innocence and denied feeling hatred towards Belinda. Instead, he claimed that what happened on the day of Belinda's murder was that he had skipped school with his friend. They spent the day smoking cannabis and then visited a few friends' houses. Riley said he ended his day by falling asleep on his couch and waking up around 6 p.m. to find the crime scene tape outside Belinda and Dave's home. Despite David's theory that his neighbor Riley murdered his wife, the detectives were unable to find any conclusive evidence linking Riley to Belinda's murder. Furthermore, they verified Riley's alibi by speaking to his friends, which cast doubt upon David's theory. While the detectives entertained the possibility that Riley might have murdered Belinda and her unborn daughter, they maintained their focus on David, Belinda's husband. During the investigation into Belinda's murder, the detectives learned that David had a close relationship with another teacher at the high school where he worked. Her name was Heather Scott. David informed the detectives that he and Heather had engaged in flirtatious behavior through emails and during outings to happy hour. However, he insisted that their relationship was limited to this and nothing more. The detectives proceeded to question Heather on several occasions. During their first interview, Heather admitted that she and Dave had never been alone together. However, she described their interactions as a casual romantic relationship. This statement raised several red flags for the detectives. However, after Heather consulted with an attorney, she gave the detectives a second statement. In this statement, Heather revealed that her relationship with David was more significant than she had initially claimed. She said they had spent New Year's Eve together and engaged in intimate relations at her house. When the detectives questioned David about his alleged New Year's Eve encounter with Heather, his coworker, rather than his heavily pregnant wife Belinda, David admitted that he did. However, David insisted Heather meant nothing to him. He stated that their connection was purely physical and that he enjoyed the attention he received from her. According to David, he genuinely loved Belinda and would have laid his life down for her. David admitted hurting Belinda by having an affair, but denied ever physically harming her. 3 months after Belinda's murder, a grand jury convened and decided not to indict either Riley Sanders or David Temple for Belinda's murder. However, the detectives remained convinced that David was responsible, although they lacked sufficient evidence to connect him to the crime. Over the following years, the investigation of Belinda's murder went cold, and the case remained unsolved. David moved on with his life and remarried. His new wife was Heather Scott. Even though David had never been charged with a crime related to Belinda's murder, her family was convinced that he was responsible. They did everything they could to keep Belinda's name in the spotlight. Belinda's loved ones paid for a giant billboard to be erected over a busy highway and took news crews to her gravesite to bring awareness to her case. However, despite their efforts, nothing seemed to change. The tip lines remained silent and leads dried up. Everyone thought Belinda's murder would remain unsolved, but as it turned out, in November 2004, everything changed when more than 5 years after Belinda's death, Scott Peterson was convicted of murdering his pregnant wife Lacey in California. This conviction sparked renewed interest in Belinda's case, as the prosecutors in Katy, Texas, believed there were numerous similarities between Lacey Peterson's murder and Belinda Temple's. Additionally, the state secured a guilty verdict against Scott without any forensic evidence, and although prosecutors in Texas believed David was the person responsible for Belinda's death, they lacked any physical evidence linking him to the crime. Utilizing Scott's conviction as a precedent, the prosecutors in Texas revisited Belinda's case to determine if there was sufficient evidence to charge David with murder. The prosecution formulated a theory that Belinda arrived home on January 11, 1999, and her husband David was lying in wait for her with a 12-gauge shotgun. They believed that David confronted Belinda and coerced her upstairs into a closet where he fatally shot her in the head. Following the homicide, the prosecution believes that David staged the scene to resemble a botched burglary, took his son, and proceeded to drive around town in order to establish an alibi, ensuring he was captured on 2 security cameras. On November 30, 2004, 6 years after Belinda's murder, David Temple was arrested and charged with her murder. However, due to various delays, the case took an additional 3 years to reach court. During that period, Heather was never charged with any crime related to Belinda's murder, and no evidence was found to suggest that she had prior knowledge of David's involvement in Belinda's murder. In 2007, when David faced trial for the murder of his wife, his defense focused on proving that his neighbor, 16-year-old Riley Sanders, committed the crime rather than himself. After just 8 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a guilty verdict, sentencing David to life in prison. However, in 2016, the courts overturned his conviction, citing the prosecution's failure to disclose crucial evidence. This reversal set the stage for another trial in 2019, where David was once again convicted of murdering Belinda. Despite the guilty verdict, the judge declared a mistrial as the jury was unable to agree on a sentence. In the years that followed, David's resentencing hearing was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Finally, in 2023, the hearing commenced. Once again, it took the jury just a few hours to find David guilty and sentence him to life. Michelle Williams led a rather troubled life. When she was just 17 years old, she found herself pregnant with her first son. Less than a decade later, Michelle had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, by 2 different men. She had been divorced twice, and Michelle claimed that all of her relationships had ended because her partner had cheated on her. According to Michelle, one of her exes cheated on her with their 17-year-old dental hygienist. However, one of her younger sons, Andrew, had a different perspective. Andrew said that not only were their mother's husbands unfaithful, but Michelle herself had also cheated on her various husbands over the years.
Lee, Michelle's older son, said growing up in Michelle's household was even more chaotic. Michelle worked in various exotic nightclubs and topless bars and would often drag her children around with her. Given Michelle's line of work, her sons even suspected that she might have dabbled in sex work. Michelle's lifestyle had a significant impact on her children. Lee described their childhood as chaotic, saying they constantly had to adjust to their mother's changing circumstances. The presence of exotic nightclubs and topless bars in their neighborhood made it hard for them to maintain the normal upbringing. However, things in Michelle Williams' life took a turn for the better in 2007 when she met Greg Williams. Michelle and Greg were introduced while they were at a swingers club. According to Greg's brother Michael, who was with Greg at the club, Michelle was openly performing sex acts in public at the club, but despite that, Greg was smitten with her. Greg Williams was a successful businessman and computer engineer who built a successful company from the ground up and netted $500,000 annually. When Greg is not working, he's at the gym bodybuilding or practicing martial arts. Furthermore, Greg was devoted to his family. He had a young daughter who he adored. Michelle was captivated by Greg's success and wealth and saw in him the potential to provide her with the lifestyle she had always desired. Michelle had always dreamed of having financial independence, a luxurious lifestyle, and a supportive partner. Greg seemed to offer all these things and more. In 2007, Greg and Michelle decided to get married after only a few months of dating. However, Michelle's two sons, Lee and Andrew, both Army veterans, were not enthusiastic about their mother and Greg being husband and wife. They had reservations about Greg's character and saw him as an arrogant bully. However, Michelle's sons were not the only ones who had reservations about her and Greg's relationship. Several of Greg's relatives also expressed doubts and questions about Michelle's motives. They wondered if she was only interested in Greg for his fortune. According to Michelle Fletcher, Greg's sister, Michelle was never nice to her. Michelle Fletcher accused her sister-in-law, Michelle, of brazenly using her sexuality with men, and even tried her moves on her husband, Bryn. Once, Michelle had crawled up to the attic and asked for Bryn's help. When Bryn got up there, he noticed Michelle bent over without underwear trying to entice him. Despite everyone's apprehensions about their marriage, Greg didn't seem to mind being married to Michelle. Greg purchased an affluent house in the suburbs of a gated community in Keller, Texas, a suburb of Fort Worth, a safe area to raise a family. Greg bought Michelle whatever she wanted, and they had a pair of matching Mercedes-Benz in their garage, which he purchased as an anniversary gift for them. Greg and Michelle eventually had a daughter. By all accounts, Greg was dedicated to his older daughter and his younger one. However, Michelle did not get along well with her stepdaughter. Michelle and her new daughter had a strained relationship from the beginning. Michelle felt her stepdaughter was not respectful of her authority and treated her with disdain. The situation escalated when Michelle accused her stepdaughter of attempting to drug her by slipping drugs into her morning coffee. Despite his daughter's denials, Greg made the decision to send her away to rehab. Because Greg worked long hours, he purchased Michelle a frozen yogurt shop called Blueberries in 2011 to keep her busy. This decision was made despite Michelle's lack of a business background. Greg hoped that owning a business would keep Michelle occupied. However, Michelle did not fully commit herself to running the business. She spent very little time at Blueberries unless it was to come and take money out of the till. Michelle treated the shop as her personal ATM, withdrawing cash whenever she needed it. Instead of focusing on running her business, Michelle prioritized her indulgences. In October 2011, Greg and Michelle Williams were looking forward to closing on their new home. They meticulously planned every detail, including a pool for their 4-year-old daughter to play in. However, everything changed on October 13th at 4:40 a.m. when Michelle dialed 911 and frantically shouted that there was a person in her home who had shot her husband. Michelle, clearly shaken, expressed her fear that the shooter was still inside the house.
heightening her anxiety as her young daughter was asleep there as well. Within moments, police officers arrived at the scene and promptly began their investigation. The officers quickly searched the premises, even venturing outside to check for intruders. Despite their thorough efforts, the officers were unable to locate any suspects. However, when they ascended the stairs to the couple's master bedroom, they discovered a shocking sight. In the bed, lifeless and surrounded by a pool of blood, lay 40-year-old Greg, the victim of a gunshot wound to his right temple. At the scene, Michelle informed the responding officers that she had been asleep on the couch with her daughter when a loud noise awoke her. Michelle walked to the master bedroom to check on her husband, Greg. When she arrived, Michelle thought she saw a dark-clad figure in the room. She stated that at that moment, she felt a sharp pain in her head and everything went black. According to Michelle, this person hit her in the head. Crime scene investigators arrived at Greg and Michelle's home. Upon their arrival, they observed no evidence of forced entry, which raised the question of how the intruder had entered the house. Additionally, it was discovered that nothing had been stolen. The investigators observed that none of the drawers had been opened or rifled through, and $20,000 was found in the safe untouched, indicating that the motive for the shooting was not robbery. At the back door of the home, the investigators discovered a handgun, a .45 caliber weapon with a shell casing and a wrench lying beside it. Several feet from the back door, the investigators found plastic-colored tubs filled with Clorox wipes. Upon further investigation, the investigators determined that the Clorox wipes had been used to wipe down every surface of the house. The investigators found no fingerprints or DNA, not even from the people living in the house. Michelle was interviewed at the police department regarding her husband Greg's shooting. She repeated the same story she had given the responding officers, although detectives found her story suspicious. The detectives confronted Michelle and told her that her story did not align with the evidence discovered at the scene. Based on the evidence, it appeared that either Michelle had shot Greg or covered up the crime. However, Michelle adamantly denied harming her husband or having any involvement in his death. She agreed to take a gunshot residue test, and the results were negative. After 5 hours of interrogation, Michelle began to alter her account of how Greg died. Michelle stated that Greg had taken his life, and she covered up the evidence in order to protect their 4-year-old daughter from learning that her father had taken his own life. Michelle reasoned that it would be less traumatic for the child to believe that an intruder was responsible. Upon discovering Greg's lifeless body, Michelle told the detective she made a decision to conceal the fact that Greg took his life and staged it as a robbery gone wrong. To perpetuate this ruse, she utilized Clorox wipes to clean every corner of the house, including the gun that was used to take Greg's life. She then intentionally positioned the weapon outside the patio door along with a wrench that she had used to hit herself in the face, creating a false impression that an intruder had harmed her. Since Michelle admitted to staging the crime scene to look like a robbery gone wrong, it led to her being charged with evidence tampering and released on bail. Upon being released from custody, she met with Greg's grieving family and told them the same story she had shared with the police. Michelle claimed that Greg had exhibited signs of depression prior to the incident. Michelle stated that one day, she walked into the garage and discovered both of their Mercedes-Benzes were warm, indicating that someone had been operating them within the garage. This discovery raised suspicions for Michelle, and she wondered if Greg may have been contemplating taking his own life that day. When Michelle spoke to her sister after Greg's death, she admitted she cleaned Greg's hands and weapon while staging the crime scene. Greg's death became front-page news, captivating the attention of the residents of Keller, Texas. This story, which unfolded in a wealthy gated community, had all the elements of a captivating real-life soap opera. The shocking circumstances surrounding his death had everyone glued to their screens, unable to get enough details. In the weeks following Greg's death, Michelle, his wife, did not take part in his funeral arrangements and even did not attend the service. Michelle's absence left Greg's family feeling hurt and confused, as they expected Michelle to be more involved in honoring her husband's memory. Moreover, Michelle decided to sell the frozen yogurt shop Blueberries, which Greg had purchased for her only months before his death. When Greg bought the shop, he paid $110,000 for it. However, Michelle decided to sell it for a mere $45,000. Furthermore, Michelle sold the frozen yogurt shop and Greg's business despite Greg having an excellent client base and netting $500,000 a year. After Greg's death, Michelle sold the company for only $8,000 a month. Greg's family believed Michelle was actively trying to dispose of Greg's possessions and legacy as quickly as possible. Her behavior made them question her involvement in his death. Greg's relatives were not the only ones who had doubts about Michelle's strange behavior. The detectives who were investigating Greg's shooting also found themselves questioning Michelle's account of staging the crime scene to hide the fact that Greg had taken his own life. They believed the story to be absurd and suspected that Michelle was the actual shooter. Their suspicions were fueled by the overwhelming evidence pointing toward Michelle as the killer. The detectives were faced with the task of determining what weapon was used to kill Greg. In order to identify and trace the fired bullets or cartridge cases back to a firearm, they sought the expertise of a forensic firearm toolmark examiner. This examiner is trained to analyze and compare marks left on fired bullets or cartridge cases to determine their origin and connection to a specific firearm. Upon examination, it was revealed that Greg owned a .45 caliber gun which was recovered from the scene. This particular firearm was a high-end pistol that Greg typically kept on his nightstand. The forensic firearm toolmark examiner conducted a detailed analysis and was able to determine that this gun was the weapon used to kill Greg. Additionally, the examination revealed the presence of bullet cases in the bedding, and the bullet recovered from the autopsy was found to be a match to Greg's gun. During Greg's autopsy, the medical examiner performed a thorough examination to determine the circumstances surrounding his death. One notable finding was that the shot fired into Greg's head went directly through him rather than up or down, and this raised the questions for the medical examiner, as it seemed unusual for the bullet to have traveled that way if Greg had shot himself. Additionally, the medical examiner observed stipulating marks on the right side of Greg's face. These marks, which resembled small bruises, were caused by the forceful impact of gunpowder upon the skin. The stipulation marks indicated that the gunpowder traveled some distance, indicating that this was not a contact wound. Another significant observation made by the medical examiner was the distance of the firearm from Greg when it was fired. The examiner estimated that the gun was 6 to 24 inches away from Greg's head. This distance further contradicted the idea that Greg had taken his life. Furthermore, the examination of the crime scene provided additional evidence contradicting the theory of Greg taking his life. The shell casing recovered from the bedding was a crucial piece of evidence. This position of the casing was found in an area that would not have been easily reachable if it had been ejected from the firearm in the position Greg was in if he had shot himself. In January 2012, 3 months after Greg's death, Michelle, his wife, was arrested and charged with his murder. However, the detectives in the case faced a huddle. The Keller Police Department, inexperienced at murder scenes, had not done a great job in their initial investigation. When Greg's body was transported from the crime scene to the medical examiner's office, he was wrapped in his bed sheets, which could potentially lead to cross-examination. The case faced numerous issues, and the state offered Michelle a plea deal. Rather than murder, Michelle could plead to tampering with evidence in a Texas charge called deadly conduct, which means wielding a weapon irresponsibly. Michelle accepted the deal and faced a sentence of 2 to 20 years. However, Michelle knew that if she went to trial, she could end up imprisoned for 50 to 100 years. She wanted to get out to be with her daughter as soon as possible. With the plea deal, Michelle would be released when her daughter turned 18. Michelle had been released on bail following her arrest for allegedly murdering her husband. After being released, she began dating Gene Wallace, a personal trainer who is 12 years younger than her. Gene was Lee's, Michelle's son's, best friend, which added an extra layer of complexity to the situation. When Lee discovered his mother and best friend were together, he was angry and resentful. Lee's anger stemmed from feeling betrayed by his best friend and mother. Despite the circumstances, Michelle and Gene decided to pursue their relationship further. They opened a gym together, which was a turning point for Michelle. She began referring to herself as Shelly and adopted a new persona. During one of Michelle's court hearings, she informed the judge that she was pregnant with twins and that it was a high-risk pregnancy. The judge and the prosecution were skeptical of Michelle's claim, but they decided to delay her sentencing hearing until after the birth of the babies. To challenge the doubts, Michelle produced sonogram pictures in court. However, those familiar with Michelle pointed out that faking pregnancies was one of her well-known traits. Additionally, there had been rumors that she had faked miscarriages in the past in order to seek attention and garner sympathy. These claims cast a shadow of doubt on her pregnancy's authenticity. Michelle was interviewed by a reporter with 48 hours as she was awaiting sentencing for her plea deal on charges of deadly conduct related to her husband's death. However, rather than maintaining her initial story that Greg took his own life, Michelle stunned everyone by reverting to her original claim that a mysterious dark-clad intruder killed Greg. This sudden change in narrative caught the attention of the judge, who promptly summoned Michelle to court and admonished her for denying what she had pleaded guilty to. The judge was particularly displeased by Michelle's attempt to shift blame away from herself. As a result of Michelle's denial, the judge revoked her plea deal, leaving her at risk of receiving a life sentence rather than serving a few years in jail. Michelle went on trial for murdering her husband in September 2014, 3 years after Greg died. During her trial, there was no sign Michelle was pregnant at all, let alone with twins. Furthermore, investigators found no doctor or hospital records that indicated Michelle was pregnant, despite her claims. It was clear to everyone Michelle lied about being pregnant in an attempt to get her trial delayed and even possibly dismissed. As Michelle's trial began, the prosecutors presented their case, alleging that she was responsible for shooting and killing Greg. The prosecution claimed that the primary motive behind Michelle's actions was financial. They alleged that despite Greg's high-income career, Michelle's excessive spending habits had left the couple unable to afford the down payment on the house they were planning to purchase. According to the prosecution, Michelle's uncontrollable spending had left the couple with a mere $30,000 in their bank accounts. Michelle was allegedly driven to commit the murder as a means to secure the financial resources they needed to fulfill their dream of owning a home. The prosecutors in the case alleged that a fight ensued when Greg discovered that there was no money left in their account. During this altercation, Michelle realized that with Greg gone, he was worth more to her than alive due to his $850,000 life insurance policy. As a result, she decided to take action and eliminate him. During the trial, the state called the medical examiner a witness. With nearly 40 years of professional experience, the medical examiner testified that he had never came across an instance where a person committed took their life with a gun positioned from the distance in which Greg's was. Additionally, Greg's mother took the witness stand and recounted her memories of her son. She mentioned that Greg was frequently tired from work, but despite this, he was content with his life and thoroughly enjoyed spending time with his daughter. According to his mother, Greg would often gush about the house he and Michelle were planning on buying. The state's bombshell witness was Andrew, Michelle's younger son. While on the witness stand, Andrew shared a shocking revelation. According to Andrew, 1 month after Greg passed away, Michelle approached him and asked him to reach out to some friends. She asked them to purchase a large sweater and go out to the woods and fire a pistol. This plan was to leave behind gunpowder residue on the shirt. Michelle then instructed the friends to break into Greg's ex-wife, Kathy's, car and leave the sweater inside. She wanted them to report the incident to the police using a payphone, stating that the shirt had been stolen. The police would search the car and find the sweater, which would lead them to believe that Kathy was involved in Greg's murder. Initially, Greg dismissed Michelle's claims, thinking that she was not being serious. However, as time went on, Michelle began asking Andrew if he thought his brother Lee might have murdered Greg. Andrew was upset by this request, as he believed that his mother was trying to frame her son for Greg's death.
In their closing arguments, the prosecution made a strong statement regarding Michelle's character to the jury. They described her as a cold-blooded killer and urged them to find her guilty. This statement left a lasting impression on the jury, who deliberated for 7 hours before reaching the verdict. The jury found Michelle guilty and sentenced her to 60 years in prison. She will be eligible for parole after serving 30 years when she is 74. While this news brought relief to some, others remain skeptical, as they believe that Michelle's guilt extends beyond the murder of her husband, Greg. Michelle's former sister-in-law, Michelle Fletcher, holds the belief that Michelle is also responsible for another death. Bryn Fletcher, Greg's brother-in-law and best friend, was killed 10 months before Greg was murdered. On the day Bryn died, he had embarked on a business trip for Greg's company. Bryn worked as a truck driver and was driving a pickup truck. According to his wife, Michelle Fletcher, Bryn followed directions given to him by Michelle Williams, Greg's wife. Approximately 45 minutes into Bryn's drive, he pulled over to the side of Highway 34. Later, police officers responded to a call regarding an abandoned truck on Highway 34. Upon further investigation, they discovered the body of Bryn inside the vehicle. Bryn had been shot once in the head. Following the autopsy conducted by the medical examiner, it was established that Bryn's manner of death was ruled as suicide. However, Michelle Fletcher, Bryn's wife, had a different opinion. She believes that Michelle Williams is somehow responsible for Bryn's demise. Michelle Fletcher believed that Michelle killed Bryn in order to cover up her lies, as Bryn may have been onto her out-of-control behavior. Despite Michelle Fletcher's suspicions, no charges have ever been brought upon Michelle for Bryn's death, and the police have indicated that they have no plans to reopen the investigation.
In the late 1980s, Mark Winger found himself on a blind date with a co-worker of his brother. Her name was Donna. Donna worked as a hospital tech, and Mark was a well-respected nuclear engineer. As they embarked on their blind date, Mark and Donna quickly discovered that they hit it off. It wasn't long before they became an official couple. After 6 months of dating, Mark decided to propose to Donna, and she happily accepted. On March 4th, 1989, Mark and Donna tied the knot in a grand wedding ceremony in Hollywood, Florida. The newlyweds celebrated their love and union in front of their friends and family. Following the ceremony, Mark and Donna stayed in Florida, where they enjoyed their time as newlyweds. However, after a few years, they decided to move to Springfield, Illinois. In Springfield, Mark and Donna built a new life together. They settled down and focused on their career and family. Donna and Mark were deeply committed to having children and were devastated when they discovered that Donna was unable to have them. Mark's dream of having a big family was shattered, and he found it difficult to accept. However, 6 years into their marriage, things took a surprising turn. In June 1995, while Donna was working in the operating room, a doctor approached her with a life-changing proposition. The doctor informed Donna that he had encountered a teenage mother who wanted to adopt her baby. He said the mother asked if he knew of anyone who would be a suitable candidate for adoption, and without hesitation, the doctor's mind immediately went to Donna and Mark. When Donna went home and shared the doctor's suggestion with Mark, they immediately knew they wanted to adopt the baby. The decision was not made lightly, as they recognized the immense responsibility and challenges that come with adoption. However, their love for children and desire to provide a loving home for a child in need outweighed any hesitations. Donna and Mark brought their newborn baby girl, Bailey, home from the hospital, and from the moment she arrived, Donna and the baby formed a strong bond. It was evident from the beginning that Donna's maternal instincts were in full swing, and she seemed to thrive as a mother. On the other hand, Mark was full of excitement and anticipation as he prepared for his new role as a father. Together, the Winger family appeared picture-perfect, resembling an all-American family with their loving and nurturing bond. To support Donna in her new role as a mother, her close friend Deanne Schultz regularly stopped by to offer her assistance. Deanne, whom Donna had befriended while working at the hospital, proved to be an invaluable source of support and guidance. She would often lend a hand in caring for Bailey, allowing Donna to take a much-needed break. In the summer of 1996, Donna and baby Bailey embarked on a journey to Florida to visit Donna's parents. Donna was eager to showcase her daughter and introduce her to her side of the family. To ensure a smooth journey, Donna's parents arranged to have a driver pick her up from the airport after her trip and take her back home. This arrangement was made to allow Donna to fully focus on Bailey and not have to worry about the 2-hour drive. As they embarked on the journey home, the driver began a conversation with Donna. In his confession, the driver revealed that he had been hearing a voice in his head that kept saying bad things. However, more recently, he claimed that the voice was telling him to hurt people by setting up a car bomb. Donna was alarmed by this revelation and found herself questioning the driver's sanity. Furthermore, the driver disclosed that he had a penchant for older women. He also revealed that he would host raunchy parties and invite Donna to join him. These revelations further raised alarm bells for Donna as she became increasingly concerned about the man's intentions. As the drive continued, the driver's behavior became increasingly erratic. He frequently switched lanes and accelerated at unexpected speeds. Throughout the ride home, Donna's mind raced with thoughts of the driver's alarming revelations and unsettling behavior. She couldn't help but wonder if she should trust the man behind the wheel with her and Bailey's safety. The journey home became an even more nerve-wracking experience, with Donna constantly on guard and praying for a safe return home.
When Donna got home with Bailey, she was relieved. However, the experience had left her shaken. She called her sister, who offered her reassurance and told her to forget about the traumatic car ride. Despite the reassurance, Donna couldn't shake the feeling of unease. She began receiving strange phone calls, and suspecting that the caller was the driver, Mark called the car company and filed a complaint. As a result, the driver, Roger Harrington, was suspended from his job. Mark had Donna write down what happened, ensuring they had documentation if needed. On August 29, 1996, Mark Winger placed a call to 911, frantically reporting that a man had entered his home and begun assaulting his wife, Donna. In his distressed state, Mark exclaimed that Donna's brains were scattered everywhere. He informed the dispatcher that he had shot the attacker in self-defense. Within minutes, the Springfield Police Department arrived at Donna and Mark Winger's residence. Upon entering through the front door, the officers observed 2 bodies lying on the floor. Although Donna was still alive, she barely clung to life. She had been brutally struck at least 7 times in the head, causing severe injuries. Beside Donna's body, the officers discovered another man lying motionless. Upon closer examination, they found that the man had a faint pulse and had suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the head. Further investigation revealed that the man's driver's license identified him as Roger Harrington. As Donna and Roger Harrington were taken to the hospital by ambulance, the police arrived at the scene to investigate. Upon examining the area, they discovered a hammer covered in blood and a .45 caliber semi-automatic handgun. Furthermore, on the kitchen table, the police noticed a yellow coffee mug and a pack of cigarettes. Outside the victim's home, the police observed Roger Harrington's car parked in the opposite direction. Inside Roger's vehicle, the police discovered a note which read, "Mark Winger, 4:30 p.m." The letter included Donna and Mark's address. A homicide detective arrived at the scene and met with Mark Winger in the master bedroom of his house. Mark was visibly upset and emotional, continuously asking who the attacker was. While the detective knew that the person responsible was Roger Harrington, he decided to withhold this information for the time being. Mark eventually calmed down enough to tell the detective what had happened. According to Mark, he was working out on his treadmill in the basement when he heard a loud commotion. Concerned, he went to investigate and saw something that seemed off. Mark peered into the master bedroom and discovered that their daughter, Bailey, was lying unattended on the bed. Bailey being alone raised his suspicions as he knew that his wife, Donna, would never leave their child unattended. Continuing his investigation, Mark heard noises coming from the direction of the kitchen. Determined to protect his family, Mark retrieved his gun from the nightstand and walked down the hallway. What he found was a terrifying sight, a strange man attacking Donna with a hammer. The man looked up, made eye contact with Mark, and continued striking Donna with the hammer. Mark, in response, took matters into his own hands and shot the man in self-defense. Although the man fell backward after being shot, the man managed to get back up. This movement caught Mark off guard, and he decided to take action once again. He fired another shot at the man. After the incident, Mark had a conversation with the detective in which he sought clarification on the identity of the man who had been beating Donna. The detective confirmed that the man was indeed Roger Harrington. Upon hearing the detective's confirmation, Mark expressed his shock and disbelief. He exclaimed, "Oh my God, that's the man who had been harassing my wife." As the detective searched Mark and Donna's home, he discovered a note written by Donna describing her terrifying drive home from the airport with Roger Harrington. The detective was already familiar with Roger Harrington, who owned a trailer park in the town. Roger and his wife resided there and often encountered domestic disputes. It made sense to the detective that Roger, enraged after losing his job, would retaliate by returning to Donna and Mark's home and causing violence. The detective reasoned that Mark, in the face of danger, would ultimately have no choice but to shoot Roger in self-defense. After conducting a thorough examination of the scene of the crime and hearing Mark's explanation, the police concluded that the shooting was an act of self-defense. As a result, the case was closed and Mark was exonerated. After Donna's funeral, her mother and sister stayed behind in Illinois to help take care of her newborn baby, Bailey. During that time, they noticed Mark acting strangely. He was consuming excessive amounts of alcohol and immersing himself in violent and disturbing movies, despite having recently undergone a traumatic event. By December 1995, Donna's family could no longer sustain the demands of traveling back and forth between their homes to assist Mark with caring for the baby. As a result, they proposed to Mark that he hire a nanny. Mark eventually agreed to the idea and hired a woman named Rebecca, who stood out due to her stunning appearance and kind demeanor. Rebecca was a tall, blonde woman who exuded warmth and compassion. She eagerly took on the responsibility of caring for Bailey and promptly began removing all the items the infant required. Donna's family felt reassured by Rebecca's presence, knowing their baby was in good hands. After showing Rebecca the ropes, Donna's family decided to return home, content that Bailey was being well taken care of by Rebecca. Rebecca and baby Bailey formed a strong bond rather quickly. There were nights when Rebecca and Mark would stay up late, drinking wine and engaging in deep conversations. However, there was one issue that arose. Donna's best friend, Deanne Schultz, expressed a strong desire to be a part of Bailey's life. However, Rebecca felt uncomfortable and Deanne seemed to push excessively to be involved in their child's life. Rebecca believed that Deanne was attempting to take over Donna's role. When Rebecca mentioned Deanne's strange behavior to Mark, he explained that Deanne was still grieving the loss of Donna. He said Deanne's actions were driven by a deep sense of loss and a desire to fill the void left behind by her friend's death. Mark believed Deanne's intentions were good, but she was still struggling to come to terms with the tragedy that had unfolded. Mark filed a lawsuit against the BART Transportation Company, alleging that the company was liable for the murder of Donna. The lawsuit was filed under a claim of wrongful death, seeking justice and compensation for the loss of Donna. In January 1996, Mark contacted the detective working on Donna's case and asked about its status. Mark specifically inquired about the possibility of retrieving his gun, which he had recently surrendered to the authorities. However, sensing something off about Mark, the detective felt uneasy during their conversation. There were certain aspects of the crime scene that raised doubts in the detective's mind about the true nature of events that led to Donna's death. Mark and Rebecca's relationship took a romantic turn, and they began dating. When Mark met Rebecca's brother, he decided to share a story about a tragic incident involving the murder of his wife, Donna. However, as Mark relayed the story, Rebecca's brother became uncomfortable. Mark's account of the murder seemed to focus more on his abilities and achievements rather than the tragic loss of Donna. Instead of conveying a sense of sorrow and empathy, Mark boasted about his heroic actions and how he saved the day with his gun. Rebecca's brother thought this strange, as it was not the appropriate time to boast about ego and achievements while discussing such a horrific event. It seemed to Rebecca's brother that Mark was primarily interested in promoting himself and capitalizing on Donna's death, rather than honoring her memory and reflecting on the impact of the tragedy. Shortly after Rebecca and Mark started dating, Rebecca discovered she was pregnant. This news was met with joy and excitement from both Rebecca and Mark, as they were thrilled to welcome another baby into the world. Mark was determined to show Rebecca how serious he was about their relationship and marriage, and he decided to take action. Mark, who was Jewish, knew that this decision would significantly impact both their lives.
However, he decided it was important to convert to Christianity to demonstrate his commitment to Rebecca and their future family. Mark believed that embracing a new religion would show his willingness to make sacrifices for their relationship. 14 months after Donna's murder, Rebecca and Mark decided to elope in Hawaii. They decided to keep the news a secret, not wanting to burden their loved ones with the additional stress of a wedding so soon after the tragic death of Donna. This decision hurt Donna's family deeply, as they couldn't believe that Mark could have replaced Donna so quickly. In December 1996, Mark sold his and Donna's house and built a new home for himself and Rebecca in the country. They purchased a piece of land with a pond in the backyard, which became a special place for the family to play and enjoy time together. Mark would often go fishing in the pond while the rest of the family enjoyed spending time together. Over the years, Mark and Rebecca went on to expand their family, welcoming 3 children together. However, as time went on, the couple started to pull away from Donna's family. This separation was difficult for Donna's mother and sisters. On one occasion, Donna's parents decided to visit Mark in their new home. While they were visiting, they wanted to present Bailey with a necklace that had belonged to Donna. They put the necklace around Bailey's neck. However, Mark denied the request, insisting they remove the necklace from the baby. This incident further strained the relationship between the families. In their attempts to reconcile, Donna's parents reached out to Mark in a letter, expressing their concerns and desire for reunification. However, Mark responded with a letter stating that Bailey could no longer refer to Donna's mother as Grandma. Despite the strained relationship, Donna's family continued to show their love for Bailey by sending her a card every year for her birthday. Deanne Schultz, Donna's best friend, revealed to the police in February 1999 a secret she had been keeping. She confessed that she had been having an affair with her close friend Donna's husband, Mark, prior to Donna's murder. According to Deanne, Mark had made incriminating statements indicating that it would be more convenient for both of them if Donna were to pass away. However, Deanne rejected participating in Mark's plan, stating that she refused to have anything to do with a murder. On the day of Donna's murder, Mark contacted Deanne and asked, "Would you still love me when I have done something wrong?" Deanne replied, "Yes, I would." After Donna was murdered, Deanne and Mark continued their affair for about 6 months after Donna's death. However, they eventually broke up when Mark started dating Rebecca. After the murder and the life changes that occurred, Deanne experienced a difficult time. She attempted to take her own life on several occasions, struggling to cope with the aftermath of what had happened. Her life was turned upside down, and she struggled with the weight of her secret and Donna's murder. The detective was reviewing the evidence in Donna's murder case, as he had suspicions about Mark. However, he could not locate the box containing evidence related to Donna's case. The detective eventually discovered that the evidence had been released to Mark's attorney as part of a civil lawsuit against BART Transportation for wrongful death. When the detective finally obtained the evidence, he noticed several suspicious things. Firstly, there was no forced entry into the house, which raised questions about Roger Harrington's involvement. Why was a yellow coffee mug belonging to Roger found in Donna's home? If Roger intended to kill Donna, why would he bring that inside? Additionally, Roger's cigarettes were on the kitchen table, raising questions about why he would bring those into her home. Furthermore, the detective observed that the items found in Roger's car could be potential weapons. He had items such as a tire iron wrapped in tape and a knife, which could have been used to harm Donna and Mark. However, if Roger had intended to commit murder, it raises questions as to why he would choose to enter the home and use a hammer that was on the kitchen table, instead of utilizing the weapons he had in his car.
After Donna's murder, Roger's family insisted that Roger was not a troublemaker and that he was a good person. The detective began to explore the possibility that Mark had the motive to eliminate Donna, and when Donna came home with the story of the erratic car service driver, Mark saw an opportunity. Evidence gathered in the case included 3 Polaroid pictures. One of the initial officers who arrived at the scene had a camera in his possession. He took photos of the scene that depicted the positions of Donna and Roger's bodies before they were taken to the hospital. The detective was unaware that these pictures existed. The positions of Donna and Roger's bodies in the photos did not align with Mark's versions of events. Mark claimed that he shot Roger, and the latter fell back with his feet remaining near Donna's head. However, the photo showed Roger's head in the same position as Donna. This discrepancy raised suspicions and cast doubt on Mark's version of events. In September 1999, a detective approached Donna's mother and informed her of their suspicions that Mark was responsible for her daughter's murder. Donna's mother was taken aback, as she found it hard to believe that Mark could have done such a thing. However, the news brought relief to Roger's family, as they were hopeful that the detectives would work diligently to clear Roger's name. A friend of Roger's approached the police in 1991 when Donna was murdered, and then again in 1999, with information that could exonerate him. According to this friend, she was with Roger when someone called him, prompting Roger to jot down Donna and Mark's address. This piece of information led the police to believe that Roger may not have been the killer, but rather someone lured to his death. The detective began to entertain the notion that Roger may not have been directly involved in the murder, but rather someone who was deceived and manipulated by another party, most likely Mark Winger. On August 23, 2001, as the investigation into Donna's murder continued, the police conducted surveillance on Mark and Rebecca's home. However, Mark became suspicious and confronted the officers. He told them to leave him and his family alone and to stop following him. Meanwhile, as the police surveilled Mark's home, a grand jury meeting was deliberating. Little did he know that his fate would soon be sealed. A short while later, the grand jury indicted Mark for the murder of Roger and Donna. This indictment meant a formal charge against him, and a warrant was issued for his arrest. The police received word that Mark was at work and promptly made their way to the location. They called out Mark's name as they arrived, and he emerged from the building with his hands up. Mark realized that he had been caught and surrendered to the authorities. During this entire ordeal, Rebecca stood by her husband, Mark. She believed in his innocence and was determined to support him through this difficult time. Being 6 years old, Bailey, their daughter, witnessed the events as they unfolded. However, as time went on, Rebecca's support for her husband waned as she began to see the truth. Mark's trial began in May 2002. The state sought to prove Roger Harrington went to the Winger home for a meeting and not to commit murder. His attorney argued that Roger had a mental illness and had exhibited erratic behavior, raising doubts about his mental state and the possibility of committing murder. However, the state believed that Mark had lured Roger to the house for a meeting to address the issue. It was alleged that Roger willingly entered Mark's home, which explained why there was no forced entry. During the meeting, Mark fatally shot Roger in the head while Donna, with their baby, was in the bedroom. Donna heard the gunshot and ran out of the room, leaving her baby on the bed. When she came out, Mark started beating her with a hammer. When Mark thought Donna and Roger were dead, he called 911. During the call, Roger Harrington can be heard moaning in the background. Mark then informed the dispatcher that their baby was crying, and he had to go, promising to call them right back. However, no baby can be heard at the back end of the call. The state argued that Mark needed to ensure that Roger was truly dead, leading to the second shot being fired into his head. Mark was found guilty of murder and was sentenced to life without parole.
Later, Mark was charged with first-degree murder for hire, as he was alleged to have plotted to kill Deanne Schultz and a childhood friend who refused to post bail for him. Mark, however, claimed that he was merely scheming in an imaginary murder-for-hire plot, stating that it was not intended to be taken too seriously. Despite Mark's claims, he was ultimately convicted of solicitation of murder and sentenced to an additional 35 years in prison. After Mark was convicted of double murder and was sentenced to serve time in prison, Rebecca and her children were forced to distance themselves from him. In order to protect herself and her children, Rebecca decided to change their surname back to her maiden name, Simic. Rebecca believed that it could be beneficial for Bailey to meet Donna's family. She thought that they could provide her with valuable insights about Donna. One Memorial Day weekend, Bailey made the journey to Donna's hometown to meet the people who loved her. Bailey's encounter with Donna's family proved to be an eye-opening experience. She was amazed to see how much they still loved and cherished her, considering her a grandchild despite her absence. While Bailey was staying with Donna's family, it coincidentally happened to be her birthday. They decided to throw her a party to make up for all the birthdays she had missed over the years. The meeting with Donna's family had a profound impact on Bailey. It taught her about the power of love, the resilience of the human spirit, and the importance of family. Despite the distance that had been created through Mark's crimes, Donna's family's love for her remained strong. Bailey's birthday celebration also showcased the warmth and generosity of Donna's family, as they made an effort to make up for the birthdays she had missed.
Ashley Harmon was a beautiful, smart, high-energy person. However, when her parents divorced when she was 9, that proved to be a difficult time for her. During that period, Ashley transformed into a mother-like figure for her 5 siblings, and she protected them. For Ashley, there was nothing more important than her faith. She was a devout Mormon and belonged to the Church of Jesus Christ and the Latter-day Saints. When times got tough for Ashley in her life, she always relied on her faith in God. Her faith provided her with strength and solace in even the most challenging situations. Ashley's unwavering belief in God gave her a sense of peace and resilience, enabling her to overcome obstacles and face any difficulties with determination and courage. In 2003, when Ashley was attending Utah State as a human development major, she met Ennett Cloridan, a philosophy student. Like Ashley, Ennett's parents separated when he was 10, and he struggled with the aftermath before finding solace in the Mormon faith. Although Emmett was not born into the Church of Jesus Christ and the Latter-day Saints, at the age of 17, he was baptized into the church in front of his family and friends. Ashley initially found Ennett to be cute, and he reciprocated those feelings. Ennett was drawn to Ashley's intelligence, and he found himself captivated by her from the moment they met. He shared with his closest friends that he knew Ashley was the one he wanted to marry. Their relationship progressed steadily, and several months after meeting during Christmas in 2008, Ennett proposed to Ashley. She happily accepted his proposal, and the couple set their sights on a wedding. Emmett and Ashley's wedding took place in a Mormon temple, and the ceremony was a testament to their shared beliefs. The newlyweds were overjoyed as they embarked on a new life together. Their marriage was a source of stability and happiness. The Mormon faith holds marriage in high regard and emphasizes its importance as a sacred and eternal union. Followers of Mormonism believe that the bond between husband and wife extends beyond this life and persists even after death. Divorce, while discouraged, is only allowed in extreme circumstances and under specific circumstances. In 2005, Ashley and Emmett welcomed twin daughters into their lives. They were overjoyed at the opportunity to become parents and experience the joy of parenthood. Emmett embraced his new role as a father, enjoying every moment spent with his little girls. Ashley, on the other hand, was thrilled to finally live the life she had always envisioned. At the time, Ashley and Emmett were attending college at Utah State University. They managed to find a good balance between taking care of their babies and pursuing their educational goals. Although there were undoubtedly difficult times, they relied on their faith and love for one another to overcome any challenges they faced. With their unwavering determination, they persevered and continued to strive for a better future. In 2009, Emmett graduated from Utah State University with high honors, attended law school, and passed the bar, which led him to pursuing a career as a bankruptcy attorney. During this time, Ashley decided to continue staying at home to care for their growing family. While Emmett focused on building his career, Ashley dedicated herself to managing the household and nurturing their 4 children. To the outside world, the Corrigan family seemed to have an ideal life. They lived in a beautiful house with multiple children and a fulfilling career for Emmett. However, appearances can be deceiving. In August 2010, Emmett began to feel the pressure to provide for his family. With 4 young children under the age of 5, the financial demands became overwhelming. Emmett made the decision to start his own business, specializing in criminal defense. One of Emmett's friends introduced him to Candy Hall, a paralegal who once worked for a criminal attorney and had a good reputation. Emmett and Candy met at a lunch date and hit it off, leading to Emmett hiring her for his criminal defense firm. Candy Hall, Emmett's assistant, was married to a man named Robert Hall. By all accounts, Rob Hall was an amazing father and hard worker. When Candy was hired to work for Emmett Corrigan, she was excited. Initially, her husband and children were happy for her. As time went on, Ashley, Emmett's wife, began to notice changes in their marriage. Due to the stress of building a business and supporting their large family, Emmett's responsibilities weighed heavily on his shoulders. As a release, Emmett started to spend a lot of time at the gym working out. Going to the gym became like an addiction to Emmett, and he started to go at times when it wasn't convenient for his wife Ashley, who was home all the time with the 4 children alone. On January 15, 2011, Ashley and Emmett, despite growing distance between them, welcomed their 5th child, a son. However, Emmett's attentiveness towards their son differed from the dedication he showed during the birth of their other children. From the moment the baby came home, Emmett began spending increasing amounts of time away, sometimes overnight. In a conversation with her sister, Ashley confided that she was generally concerned about Emmett's activities. She feared he may be cheating on her. On the other hand, Emmett's assistant, Candy Hall, was also experiencing marital issues. Candy confided in a friend that her husband Rob was jealous of her working for a young and charismatic man like Emmett. The couple's constant fighting was taking a toll on their marriage. On March 6, 2011, Ashley and Emmett were celebrating their 7th wedding anniversary, but Emmett wasn't at home. Emmett informed Ashley that he was going to visit a bodybuilding convention, leaving Ashley home alone with the children. Her husband's behavior left Ashley feeling panicked and concerned about the state of her marriage. She wondered if there was something she was doing wrong as a wife that made Emmett unhappy. Divorce was not an option for Ashley, so she decided to endure this difficult period in her marriage with Emmett. Determined to make things better, Ashley decided to confront the situation head-on. Several days later, on March 11th, Ashley woke up with a strong determination to create unity in her home. She knew she had to fix her relationship with her husband, Emmett. Ashley spent the entire day planning the perfect day, making sure that every aspect of it was perfect. She prepared his favorite meal, cleaned the house, and ensured that the children were on their best behavior. Because Emmett was due home from work at 6 p.m., Ashley had the table set and ready to greet him. However, he didn't arrive until 2 hours later. When Ashley went to meet Emmett with a kiss, he turned away from her. Despite Emmett's coldness and the distance that had formed between them, Ashley was resolved to make her husband love her again. She knew that their love was worth fighting for and was determined to do whatever it took to rebuild their relationship. 2 hours after Ashley had finished preparing their dinner, the whole family gathered around the table to eat. Emmett, however, claimed that he was not hungry, despite his wife's evident effort and attention to detail. Ashley had clearly invested a significant amount of time, thought, and love into the meal, but Emmett's lack of interest left Ashley feeling disappointed and hurt. As the rest of the Corrigan family enjoyed their meal, Emmett suddenly stood up, announcing that he needed to drive to Walgreens. He insisted that he would be right back, seemingly oblivious to Ashley's growing concern. Ashley realized that there must be something else going on behind Emmett's actions, and she pleaded with him to stay and connect with her. She reminded him of the importance of their family. However, Emmett's response to Ashley's pleas was harsh and dismissive. Emmett told her that she should not tell him what to do, and then proceeded to leave the house, leaving Ashley feeling confused and hurt. On that same day, another problem was brewing in Emmett's life. His assistant, Candy, and Rob Hall, her husband, had reached the breaking point in their marriage. Rob was packing his things and made the decision to leave their home. Despite their love for each other, Rob believed that it was best to remove himself from the situation and start anew. That evening, Rob called his daughter and asked if she was out in Candy's car. His daughter informed him that she was not. Several minutes later, Rob's daughter drove past Walgreens and noticed her mother's car in the parking lot. Not giving it much thought, she promptly called her father to inform him of her discovery. Rob's initial response was simply, "Oh, okay." Little did they know that this seemingly innocuous phone call was about to alter the course of two families forever. Meanwhile, Ashley laid in bed, her heart heavy with worry as she prayed fervently for her marriage to work. She had continued to text and call Emmett, desperately trying to reach him, but to no avail. Her gut was telling her something was amiss, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Around 10 p.m., a 911 call, alerting dispatch to reports of gunshots and a woman screaming in the Walgreens parking lot. The police quickly mobilized, unsure of what awaited them at the scene. Was this a random drive-by shooting? A drug deal going wrong? A robbery? Or something else entirely? They had no idea what to expect as they cautiously approached the scene. When the first officer stepped out of the patrol car, his eyes were met with a chilling sight. A man lay lifeless on the ground. A second person, still alive but wounded, grasping his head in pain, was there as well. The injured man was rushed to the hospital with a gunshot wound, leaving the police with more questions than answers. Amidst the chaos, there was one woman who police wanted to speak with. Her name is Candy Hall, and she was present at the crime scene. Candy identified the man at the hospital as her husband Rob, and the man dead on the ground as her boss, Emmett. Emmett had been shot twice in the head and chest. Not long after Emmett was found dead at the Walgreens parking lot, Ashley, his wife, was woken up to knocking on her front door. When Ashley answered the door, she saw police officers outside who told her that her husband Emmett was dead. He had been shot and didn't naked. Ashley was stunned and inconsolable and had no idea what could have happened that led to this. After the police told Ashley her husband had been killed, a detective asked her if she knew who Rob and Candy Hall were. Ashley said she knew Candy was Emmett's assistant, but suspected she and Emmett had been having an affair. Candy Hall was taken to the police department from the Walgreens parking lot and questioned by the detectives, who were trying to get a clear picture of what went down that led to Emmett being killed and Rob being shot in the head. The detectives asked Candy if she and her boss Emmett had a relationship, but she said no. When asked if they ever had intercourse, Candy adamantly denied it. According to Candy, she had driven to Walgreens that night to pick up a prescription. Candy explained that she and Emmett had a coincidental meeting in the store, and they decided to go for a drive in Emmett's car. As they drove to a gas station, Candy's phone rang. It was Rob, her estranged husband. Candy informed Rob that she was out with Emmett. However, the conversation took a dark turn when Rob expressed his jealousy and threatened to shatter Emmett's head open. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Candy and Emmett arrived at Walgreens. As they stepped out of the car, Candy's heart sank as she saw Rob standing at the entrance, his anger clearly visible on his face. A heated argument ensued, and a physical fight between Rob and Emmett erupted. Suddenly, Candy heard 3 sharp pops. She turned to see both men lying on the ground. Candy spotted the gun lying on the ground and picked it up and tossed it aside. When the detectives asked Candy who fired the first shots, Rob or Emmett, she said she had no idea. The gunshot wound to Rob Hall's head was superficial. After the doctor stitched him up, the detectives went to question him. During the detectives' interview with Rob, they told him they found a gun at the crime scene and asked him who it belonged to. Rob admitted the gun was his and said he and Emmett got into a fight in the Walgreens parking lot, and at one point the gun fell from his pocket. Once the gun was on the ground, Rob alleged that Emmett dove for it, and then a struggle for the weapon started and Emmett shot him in the head. He said he didn't know who shot Emmett during the fight for the gun. Because Rob had a head wound from the gunshot, the detectives were not surprised he couldn't remember much. However, the detectives found themselves questioning if Emmett was the one who shot first, considering he ended up dead. Since the shooting had taken place in the Walgreens parking lot, the detectives turned to the security footage for answers. While reviewing the footage, the detectives noticed Rob Hall arriving in the parking lot at 9:55 p.m. 1 minute later, Rob was seen entering the Walgreens store and rushing through each aisle, seemingly searching for someone. The security footage captured Rob exiting the Walgreens at 10:06 p.m. and parking his car in the spot beside Candy's. He proceeded to wait there for the next few minutes. Approximately 10 minutes later, Emmett's truck appeared on the footage as it pulled into the parking lot. However, the shooting was not caught on camera. Candy and its assistant initially denied being in a romantic relationship with her boss. However, the whispers among their coworkers suggested otherwise. According to their coworkers, Candy and Rob were seen spending a lot of time in his office, with the door closed a mere 3 weeks after she was hired. On the day Emmett was shot, detectives stumbled upon a curious discovery. Emmett had accompanied Candy to the public defender's office to discuss divorcing Rob. During their investigation into the murder of Emmett Corrigan, the crime scene investigators conducted a search of Emmett's vehicle in the parking lot and discovered steroids in the glove compartment. Many of Emmett's loved ones were not surprised by this discovery. Because Emmett had been heavily focused on bodybuilding and his behavior was different, some of them believed that he was using steroids. When Candy gave her statement to the detectives, she described a peculiar shot cadence that led them to believe that Rob shot and killed Emmett 2 times before turning the gun around and shooting himself in the head. This evidence was sufficient for the detectives to obtain an arrest warrant for Rob Hall, charging him with first-degree murder. Rob Hall was subsequently arrested and charged with the murder of Emmett Corrigan. The consequences of Rob Hall's actions were severe. If convicted of first-degree murder, he faced either life in prison without parole or the death penalty. When it came time for Rob Hall to stand trial for the murder of Emmett, Ashley, Emmett's wife, hoped that the trial would bring some closure to her grievance process. Ashley believed that obtaining answers about her husband's affair and death would provide a sense of closure. Prosecutors alleged that Rob was angry at Emmett for having an affair with Rob's wife, Candy, and blamed Emmett for running his marriage into the ground. According to the prosecution, Rob shot Emmett and then decided to take his own life. However, Rob Hall's defense told a different story. Rob's attorneys claimed that Emmett was the aggressor on the night he died. They alleged that Emmett had a history of steroid abuse, and somehow during the altercation, Emmett got hold of Rob's gun and shot Rob before Robert regained possession of the weapon and killed Emmett in self-defense. One of the key witnesses in Rob Hall's trial was his wife, Candy Hall. Candy's testimony during her husband's trial slightly differed from the account she gave to the police on the night Emmett was killed. While on the witness stand, Candy claimed that instead of hearing 2 gunshots in quick succession followed by another, she heard a pop, then 2 more fast pops. This new version of events favored the defense's argument that Emmett shot Rob Hall first before Rob got the gun back and shot Emmett 2 times, killing him. The prosecutors needed to convince the jury that Rob, and not Emmett, was the shooter in the Walgreens parking lot. To support this theory, they presented forensic evidence alleging that the type of weapon used to kill Emmett and wound Rob accumulates a significant amount of gunshot residue, GSR, after it has been fired. Following the shooting, investigators performed a gunshot residue test on Rob and Emmett. The results of the test showed that Rob's left palm contained 32 GSR particles, while his right palm had 23 particles. On the other hand, Emmett had 1 GSR particle on his left hand and 0 on his right. These test results indicated beyond a shadow of a doubt that Rob was the one who fired the gun 3 times. Emmett never had possession of the weapon, according to the forensic evidence. After careful consideration, the jury found Rob Hall not guilty of first-degree murder. However, they did reach a unanimous decision that he was guilty of second-degree murder. This determination meant that the murder was not premeditated. The judge presiding over the case sentenced Rob to 30 years in prison. Rob will be eligible for parole in 2028 when he is 58 years old. Despite the conviction, Rob has maintained his innocence and appealed his conviction. In 2021, Rob Hall's conviction was reaffirmed by the Idaho Supreme Court, denying him a retrial. Candy Hall was arrested and criminally charged 2 months after Emmett's murder with embezzlement for allegedly stealing money from the attorney who employed her before she started working at Emmett's office. The embezzlement charges were unrelated to Emmett's murder. Tandy pleaded guilty to grand theft, a lesser charge than the original embezzlement allegations. She was sentenced to a term of imprisonment and was released in 2014 on parole. However, she currently remains on probation until 2026. In a candid interview with Dateline, Candy Hall expressed deep feelings of guilt regarding the incident and admitted that much of it stems from the impact it has had on her relationships with her children. The strain in these relationships has deepened, and she expressed her uncertainty about how they will be able to navigate through the lies she told to their family. Candy expressed her hope that one day she will be able to prove to them that it was all a regrettable mistake. Ashley faced a challenging journey in coming to terms with the fact that her husband, Emmett, was murdered by his lover's husband. In a 2015 interview on Dr. Phil, Ashley came face-to-face with Emmett's lover, Candy Hall, for the first time. Despite the emotional pain she felt, Ashley was determined to move on and create a new story for her life. As a result, she made the decision to close the book on her old life and move forward. The first step in this process was to move out of the town where she and Emmett used to live with their 5 children. Over time, the children gradually adjusted to this change and began to find joy in their lives again. Eventually, Ashley remarried and had 2 more children. Ashley blogs for victims of trauma.
Sierra Juggin was a young woman who had a hold on everyone's hearts. Her infectious happiness and humorous spirit made her the center of everyone's world. She had a spunky and sassy personality that brought immeasurable joy and happiness to those around her. Even when she made mistakes, she had a special way of making her mom smile.
As Sierra grew older and entered high school, she continued to exude her adventurous nature. She fearlessly embraced new experiences, one of which was playing volleyball. Whether on the court or off, she displayed a level of comfort and confidence that was truly remarkable. On July 19, 2016, the Juhin family returned from their vacation and began unpacking. Sierra had some exciting plans for the fall semester at the University of Toledo. She had decided to study abroad, and her mother wanted to have a conversation with her about it. However, Sierra, being a very athletic person, had recently purchased a bike but had not yet had the chance to really use it. So whenever she found time, she was eager to take a ride. Sierra left the house looking cute, with her hair up in a ponytail and wearing shorts and a tank top. She mentioned to her mother that she was heading to her boyfriend Josh's house, which was located 712 miles away from their own. Her mother acknowledged her plans and said she would see her later. At around 10:15 p.m., Josh, Sierra's boyfriend, made a phone call to Sierra's home. He was concerned about Sierra's whereabouts, as he had tried to reach her several times, but her phone was going straight to voicemail. When Josh asked Sierra's mom if she was home, she replied that Sierra was not there. Josh informed Sierra's mom that Sierra had left his house a little before 7 p.m., and he hadn't seen or heard from her since then. Sierra's mom immediately sensed something was wrong, as Sierra always answered her phone. Her first instinct was to reach out to her parents, Sierra's grandparents, who live nearby. However, Sierra's grandma informed her that Sierra was not with them. Worried about Sierra's well-being, her family and Josh embarked on a search mission to find her. Sierra's mother wasted no time and quickly got into her car, determined to scour every possible location. With a sense of urgency, she diligently examined every nook and cranny she came across, including the sides of the road. Meanwhile, Sierra's aunt joined the search effort, accompanied by her husband and son. They, too, suspected that Sierra might have been involved in an accident, possibly hit by a vehicle. As time passed, the worry escalated. The thought of Sierra being injured, perhaps with a broken leg, weighed heavily on their hearts. Despite their tireless efforts and exhaustive search, they were unable to find any sign of Sierra. Sierra's mom arrived home and immediately took to social media to reach out to Sierra's friends, desperately hoping that someone had seen or heard from her. However, to her dismay, there was no response. Hours passed, and there was still no sign of Sierra. Filled with worry, Sierra's mom knew she couldn't waste another minute and decided to call the police. Just an hour later, a concerned neighbor called Sierra's family and informed them that County Road 6 was blocked off. With their hearts racing, Sierra's family rushed out of their home to see what was happening. They were met by a chaotic scene, surrounded by officers who refused to let them pass. The officers couldn't provide any information about Sierra, leaving her mom in a panic. She couldn't help but wonder if the police had found her missing daughter. The small-town police officers, in their efforts to find answers, decided to seek assistance from the FBI. They made a promise to deliver any information they could as soon as possible to Sierra's family. Understandably, the family was unable to sleep and remained wide awake, contemplating the actions they should take the next day. Sierra's mom and aunt refused to wait for answers and took matters into their own hands. Her mom began making calls to hospitals, desperately searching for any signs of an unidentified female. Call after call turned up nothing, leaving them feeling increasingly hopeless. However, a glimmer of hope emerged when a lead came in from Detroit, Michigan. They had heard news of a young woman who bore a striking resemblance to Sierra. This woman had been admitted to a hospital without any identification after managing to escape from a moving vehicle. The injuries she sustained were severe, with numerous broken bones. In an attempt to confirm her identity, a nurse asked Sierra's family to identify marks on her body. Sierra's mom mentioned that she had a scar on her calf and her belly button pierced. The The girl in the hospital seemed to match Sierra's description, raising the family's hopes that they had finally found her. However, their hopes were soon crushed when they discovered that the girl in the hospital was not Sierra. It was devastating for the family to learn that it wasn't her, as they had invested so much hope and anticipation in the possibility. Later that morning, the police arrived at Sierra's house to provide them with an update on the events of the previous night. According to the police, one of the officers had discovered a broken cornfield nearby. As he parked his car and approached the area, he noticed signs of a struggle inside. Additionally, he came across a motorcycle track and decided to retreat without disturbing any potential evidence. It was during this retreat that he caught a glimpse of a reflection, which turned out to be Sierra's purple bike. Upon further investigation, the police found several items at the scene. These included a pair of male sunglasses, a pair of female sunglasses, a bloody sock, and a screwdriver. Based on these findings, the police explained that they believed Sierra had been abducted from that particular location. During the investigation, detectives thoroughly questioned Sierra's friends and family to gather information about her boyfriend, Josh. Through their inquiries, the detectives discovered that Sierra and Josh had been close friends since they were 7. Their friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship during their first year of high school, and they became known as a vibrant and fun-loving couple. One of their shared passions was skiing, and they often hit the slopes together. As high school came to an end, Sierra attended the University of Toledo, while Josh enrolled at Bowling Green. Despite the distance, their commitment remained strong, and they frequently discussed the prospect of marriage. However, Sierra expressed her desire to prioritize her education before settling down, highlighting her dedication to her studies. Despite this, their relationship remained serious, and they navigated the challenges of a long-distance relationship. Detectives investigating the case discovered that Sierra had visited Josh's house in the early afternoon on July 19th. According to the information gathered, Sierra decided to leave Josh's house and return home at approximately 6:30 p.m. Concerned for her safety, Josh joined Sierra on her journey back to her residence, riding alongside her on his motorcycle. After traveling a few miles, Sierra insisted that Josh turn around and go back. She expressed her independence and desire to ride her bike home alone. Reluctantly, Josh agreed, and the two of them parted ways. Josh headed back on his motorcycle, while Sierra continued her journey on her bike. During the investigation, detectives came across motorcycle tracks in the corn stalks near Sierra's bike. This finding raised the question of whether these tracks belonged to Josh's motorcycle. The detectives could not ignore this potential connection and began exploring further to determine if there was any evidence linking Josh to the scene. Detectives quickly set up a command post to gather any relevant clues about Sierra's disappearance. It didn't take long for a promising lead to come in. A resident had come forward and explained that on July 14th, as he was driving on the roads, he noticed a motorcycle helmet lying on the side of the road. Intrigued, he told his son to jump out and grab the helmet, putting it in their truck. However, after hearing what was happening with Sierra, he decided to inspect the helmet more closely. To his surprise, he noticed red stains on it, which he believed to be blood. The helmet was found in the general area where Sierra's bike was in the cornfield. The detectives approached Josh to inquire about the whereabouts of his motorcycle helmet. To their relief, Josh was able to produce the helmet, confirming he had it with him. Furthermore, the detectives verified that Josh had returned home after interviewing his parents. This alibi ruled him out as a suspect in the case. Despite being visibly shaken up, Josh was never considered by Sierra's family as someone responsible for her disappearance. Detectives were determined to identify the owner of the blood-stained motorcycle helmet found on the side of the road. Recognizing the importance of DNA evidence, they decided to send it to the crime lab for testing. With anticipation building, the detectives patiently awaited the results, hoping it would provide a breakthrough in their investigation. Meanwhile, the news of Sierra's disappearance had spread throughout the town, and the community rallied together to search for her. Concerned citizens joined forces and organized search parties, combing through every possible area in the hopes of finding any clue that could lead to her whereabouts. The townspeople felt a deep sense of unity as they worked tirelessly to bring Sierra home safely. In addition to the search efforts, the community organized a candlelight vigil for Sierra at the local high school. The atmosphere was filled with grief, hope, and determination. Hundreds of people gathered, holding flickering candles, sending their thoughts and prayers for Sierra's safe return. 2 days into the investigation into Sierra's disappearance, the police received a tip regarding a van that was seen speeding through the area. There were speculations that Sierra might have been taken in that van and possibly subjected to sex trafficking. The tipster provided the police with a license plate number associated with the vehicle. Following the lead, the police conducted an interview with the van's owner. It was discovered that the reason for the van speeding through the area was not related to Sierra's abduction. The individual explained that another vehicle had abruptly approached from behind, potentially a family member searching for Sierra, which startled him. In response, he instinctively sped off, creating a misperception of his involvement in the case. 48 hours into the investigation, no leads emerged in the search for Sierra. Her family is finding it increasingly difficult to maintain hope as each day passes. The chances of finding her alive grow slimmer and slimmer with every passing day. Despite their best efforts to remain optimistic, the grim reality of the situation is becoming harder to ignore. The police conducted a door-to-door search in their efforts to find Sierra. Eventually, their investigation led them to a farm not too far from where Sierra's bike was discovered. This particular property spanned an acre and consisted of several structures, including a small house, a trailer, and a large barn. The owner of this property was identified as James Worley. Upon arriving at the farm, the police initiated a conversation with James Worley. They questioned him about the day Sierra went missing, hoping to gather any information he might have regarding her disappearance. To their surprise, James stated that he had been out on his motorcycle on the day in question. However, his bike had broken down, leading him to lose a few items along the way, including a screwdriver and his helmet. This revelation left the detectives stunned,
as these were the same items that had been found at the scene of Sierra's abduction. James, inadvertently placing himself at the initial scene of the crime, raised significant red flags for the detectives. The connection between James and the missing Sierra became increasingly suspicious, and the police were determined to delve deeper into their investigation. As the detectives questioned James Worley, something caught their attention: scratches on his face. It was evident that he had been involved in a struggle. This discovery only heightened their suspicions about him and raised more questions. The detectives wondered if these scratches were the result of a confrontation with Sierra. The detectives returned to the police station after questioning James Worley regarding Sierra's disappearance. They wanted to conduct a background check on him, hoping to uncover relevant information. As they delved into his past, what they discovered sent chills down their spines. James Worley had a dark criminal history, which included a previous attempt to abduct a young lady 26 years earlier on July 4, 1989. On July 4, 1989, Robin Gardner, aged 26, was preparing to attend a neighborhood picnic. Her mother was busy making potato salad and getting everything ready for the event. Robin thought it would be a good idea to go for a bike ride before heading to the picnic. Unfortunately, Robin did not have any water with her, and the heat was becoming unbearable. Robin contemplated turning around and heading back home to quench her thirst. Just as Robin was about to make that decision, she heard the sound of a car approaching from behind. Robin assumed that once the vehicle passed her, she would make her way back home. However, before Robin could react, there was an impact as the car collided with her bike. As the car collided with Robin on her bike, the impact sent her flying into a nearby ditch. Stunned and disoriented,
Robin could hear the driver of the vehicle stopping and getting out. Concerned, the driver approached Robin and asked if she was okay, trying to assess the situation. However, the turn of events took a terrifying twist. Suddenly, the person who had hit Robin with the car revealed sinister intentions. Without warning, he struck her forcefully in the back of the head. Robin struggled to comprehend what was happening as the assailant placed a screwdriver to her throat, threatening her life. In a menacing tone, the man ordered Robin to get up and get into his car immediately. The man, with a screwdriver pressed against Robin's neck, forcefully coerced her into his car. Once inside, he attempted to handcuff her. Despite managing to connect one cuff around her wrist, Robin resisted fiercely, preventing him from securing the other. She screamed at the top of her lungs for help. But the desolate cornfields offered no solace, as there was no one around to hear her cries. Robin's relentless struggle against the man left her on the verge of losing consciousness multiple times, yet she continued to fight. Suddenly, amidst the eerie silence, she heard a faint sound in the distance. As she strained her eyes, she spotted a motorcycle approaching the man's car. Realizing that this could be her only chance for escape, Robin began waving her arms frantically to catch the attention of the motorcycle rider. Thankfully, the rider noticed Robin's distress and promptly brought the motorcycle to a halt. In a desperate plea for help, Robin explained that the man was attempting to end her life. Without hesitation, she seized the opportunity and swiftly climbed onto the back of the motorcycle, leaving her captor and the car behind. The man on the motorcycle drove Robin home, where she collapsed. Robin's mother called the police and an ambulance. As Robin was rushed to the hospital for medical attention, the motorcyclist, determined to assist the authorities, led the police back to the scene of the incident. To their surprise, they discovered James Worley still present with his car. James, upon being questioned, cooperated fully and provided identification to confirm his identity. However, James Worley's account of the events differed significantly from what was initially assumed. He vehemently denied any intention of abducting Robin. According to his version of the story, Robin had been riding her bike erratically, swerving into the road, making it impossible for him to avoid colliding with her. James claimed that Robin was in a state of hysteria following the accident, which led him to restrain her with handcuffs, not to harm her, but to secure her to the steering wheel of his truck while he sought help. He insisted that his actions were driven by a genuine concern for Robin's well-being. James Worley was arrested in 1989 after attempting to take Robin. He was found guilty of abduction and subsequently sent to the state prison in Mansfield, Ohio. Worley received a sentence of 6 to 10 years. However, due to exhibiting good behavior, he was released 3 years later. When Robin learned that the man who had tried to kidnap her was released, she was terrified. The fear of James potentially acting again weighed heavily on her mind. Armed with information about James Worley's criminal past, the police decided to pay a visit to his residence. Equipped with a search warrant, they arrived at his home and began their investigation. Upon searching the house, which James shared with his mother, nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary. However, their attention then turned to James's expansive backyard. As they combed through the vast outdoor space, the officers stumbled upon a barn tucked away in the corner. Curiosity piqued, they cautiously approached the structure. Inside, they discovered neatly stacked bales of hay. The police carefully inspected the barn, meticulously searching for any evidence that could potentially tie James to Sierra's disappearance. Every nook and cranny was thoroughly examined, and each bale of hay was scrutinized in the hopes of uncovering any hidden items or clues. During the detectives' meticulous removal of the bales of hay from James Worley's barn, their eyes landed on a small green crate hidden in the corner. They cautiously approached and opened the box, revealing its contents. Inside, they discovered bags of underwear, stockings, and tube tops neatly labeled and sealed in plastic Ziploc bags. As they sifted through the various items, their eyes widened at the sight of a pair of purple panties stained with what appeared to be blood. The detectives couldn't help but feel a sense of dread as they contemplated what other unsettling discoveries lay ahead in their search of James Worley's barn. The detectives immediately noticed a piece of plywood lying on the ground. Recognizing its potential significance, they carefully removed the plywood, revealing a small cubic feet freezer buried in the barn. They opened the freezer, only to be greeted by a foul odor. It was a strong chemical smell reminiscent of bleach, which further raised their suspicions. As the detectives continued their investigation, they discovered other disturbing elements partially concealed by hay bales. Among them was an air mattress bearing unsightly stains that hinted at a gruesome past. The presence of zip ties, duct tape, handcuffs, and keys further fueled their concerns. These items were all too familiar, consistent with those used in abductions and other nefarious activities. The detectives made the decision to submit everything taken from the property for DNA testing. In his defense, Worley attempted to explain the items as part of a porn business he claimed to be planning. However, the weight of the evidence against him proved too substantial to dismiss. The combination of the disturbing discoveries at the crime scene, as well as the incriminating nature of the collected items, led to James's arrest for the murder of Sierra. Sierra Pham was left in utter shock upon discovering that the person who had abducted her was someone living miles away from her home. This revelation left her with a million questions swirling in her mind, but the most pressing one was undoubtedly, where was she? The detectives embarked on a thorough investigation of James's property, leaving no stone unturned. They meticulously combed through every inch of the property, ensuring a comprehensive search. To aid in their search, cadaver dogs were brought in to assist in the detection of any potential remains. During the investigation, the detectives came across a pond on the property. Recognizing its potential significance, they carefully drained the pond to uncover any evidence that may have been hidden beneath the water's surface. Not stopping there, the detectives also inspected the insulation in the front of the attic. As the investigation progressed, the detectives extended their search to the neighboring properties. Recognizing the possibility of evidence being dispersed beyond James's property, they diligently pursued leads in all directions. A call came in from a farmer as he was walking in his vast field. He noticed a peculiar area of corn that seemed to be matted down. He decided to investigate further, and as he approached the spot, he saw a mound of dirt nearby. Instantly, his mind raced, thinking it could be a potential grave. The farmer's concerns were heightened due to recent events surrounding the search for Sierra. With this in mind, he wasted no time and dialed the police, sharing his suspicions and the exact location. Responding promptly to the farmer's distress call, the police arrived. Their trained eyes caught sight of a fresh pile of dirt, further fueling their suspicions that it could indeed be a grave. Taking the situation seriously, they swiftly began processing the area, careful not to disturb any potential evidence. Every inch of the scene was examined as the officers hoped to uncover clues regarding the whereabouts of Sierra. However, despite their thorough efforts, their search yielded no results. The detectives proceeded to search the adjoining farms for Sierra. They utilized drones and helicopters to cover a larger area and increase their chances of locating her. During their search, they came across a mound of dirt with freshly matted corn. Their trained dogs indicated the scent of decomposition, suggesting a potential crime scene. As the crime scene investigators dug, the police made a grim discovery. They found human remains. Based on the evidence, it was believed to be the body of Sierra. Tragically, her hands were bound behind her back, and her feet were tied to the handcuffs. Further examination revealed that an object was lodged in her mouth, restricting her airway. It was determined that she couldn't breathe, ultimately leading to her cause of death. Later that night, the Sierra family received the devastating call they had been dreading. The police had discovered Sierra's lifeless body. This news delivered a heavy blow, and it was met with an outpouring of grief as everyone in the family broke down in tears. The weight of the moment was overwhelming, and the sorrow felt by each family member was palpable. 1 month after the tragic abduction and murder of Sierra, James Worley was indicted on 19 counts, including kidnapping and aggravated murder. 2 years later, Worley stood trial for his alleged crimes. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, he pleaded not guilty to all charges. Over 8 intense days, the state presented a terrifying story that gripped the jury and spectators alike. Jury members deliberated for 6 hours before reaching a verdict in the case of James Worley. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, Worley was found guilty on all counts related to the murder of Sierra. The severity of the crime led to a sentence of death being imposed upon James Worley. Carlisle, Ohio was home to many families, including the Richardsons. The Richardson family consisted of Kim and Scott Richardson, who were both actively involved in their children's lives. Their son, Jackson, was passionate about playing football, while their daughter, Brooke Schuyler, or Skylar as she was known, was a cheerleader. Skylar suffered from an eating disorder that ruled her life from a young age. Her mother, Kim, first noticed her daughter's struggle with her eating habits when she was in the 6th grade. At just 12 years old, Skylar's obsession with food and exercise became apparent when she refused to purchase gum if it had more than 5 calories. Because Skylar was a flyer on the cheerleading squad, she needed to be light and easy to toss. This pressure to maintain a certain weight made her battle even harder. She had become consumed by her body image and the constant fear of gaining weight. Skylar's struggle with her weight and body image began during cheerleading season. In an effort to maintain her body weight, she started throwing up after meals. However, this destructive behavior only exacerbated her issues when cheerleading season was over. After the end of cheerleading season, Skylar's struggle with her weight intensified. She would experience periods of binge eating, where she would consume excessive amounts of food in a short period. These episodes would often be followed by periods of starvation, where Skylar would restrict her food intake or engage in extreme diets. Skylar's parents noticed her changing behavior and were concerned for her well-being. They tried to approach her about their concerns, but Skylar would shut down whenever the topic was raised. She never wanted to talk about it, and any attempt to address her weight was met with resistance. Frustrated, Skylar's parents sought professional help from various doctors and therapists. They hoped that these interventions would provide some relief for their daughter. After an evaluation, Skylar was eventually diagnosed with body dysmorphia. This condition involves an obsessive focus on a perceived flaw in appearance, often leading to significant distress and impairment in daily functioning. July 2016 marked the summer before Skylar's senior year when she decided to begin dating a friend's cousin. However, the relationship did not last for long, and by January 2017, Skylar had moved on to a new boyfriend, a high school student named Brandon. Skylar was genuinely happy and seemed to be gaining weight. Her parents, Kim and Scott, hoped that their daughter's eating disorder was under control. They noticed that she looked healthy and appeared genuinely happy. In February, Skylar excitedly picked out her prom dress. It was a tightly fitted dress that required her to be laced into it. By mid-March, Skylar went on vacation with her family. During the trip, she wore a 2-piece bathing suit. Her mom thought she looked wonderful. Kim, knowing that her daughter and Brandon were heating up, wanted Skylar to start taking birth control pills. She believed that this would protect her daughter's health and help prevent any unwanted pregnancies. In mid-April 2017, Skylar visited her mother's gynecologist to obtain a prescription for birth control. Skylar's mother, Kim, waited outside the doctor's office while Skylar met with the doctor. Upon exiting the examination room, Skylar emerged with tears streaming down her face. Kim immediately asked her daughter why she was so upset, to which Skylar replied that it was a traumatic experience for her. She believed her daughter was telling the truth, unaware of the real reason behind the tears. The truth was that during Skylar's visit to the OB/GYN, the doctor informed her that she was approximately 8 months pregnant. Skylar requested the doctor not to tell anyone about this, as she was not ready to share the news with her loved ones. 9 days later, on May 5th, Skylar and her boyfriend, Brandon, went to the prom. Despite her advanced pregnancy, Skylar managed to fit into her prom gown. 2 months after Skylar went to prom on July 14, 2017, the Carlisle police showed up at the Richardson home. They informed Skylar's parents, Kim and Scott, that they needed to speak to the teenager about something she may have witnessed. The police officers assured the parents that Skylar was not in trouble and took her at their word. Scott decided to drive Skylar to the police station, unsure of what awaited them. The police wanted to question Skylar regarding a call they received from a gynecologist's office. This OB-GYN reported that one of their patients had given birth to a baby and buried the baby in the backyard. Upon receiving this information, the police promptly took Skylar into custody and brought her to an interrogation room. Skylar's father was not allowed in the room with her. Before initiating the interview, the police read Skylar her rights. They then proceeded to disclose the details of the call from the doctor's office. According to the caller, the doctor had informed them that on April 26th, Skylar had discovered that she was pregnant. However, when Skylar returned to the office, she reportedly disclosed that the baby was not alive, and she buried her in the backyard. During her interview, Skylar admitted to the police that she had given birth to a stillborn baby girl on May 7, 2017. Skylar stated that she had delivered the baby in the bathroom and noticed that the infant was not breathing and had no heartbeat. She explained that she felt the need to bury the baby and decided not to tell anyone about the incident. According to Skylar, she silently walked downstairs and retrieved a small garden shovel. She then dug a shallow grave in her backyard, where she buried the baby. To mark the spot and the memory of her child, Skylar placed a vase with a flower in it at the burial site. After questioning Skylar, the police informed her parents, Kim and Scott, about the real reason she had been brought to the station. Kim and Scott were shocked to learn that she had been pregnant, as they had no idea. They saw her every day and believed that she was unaware of her pregnancy. Upon hearing the news, Kim was heartbroken to discover that her daughter had faced this difficult situation alone. She expressed her sorrow at the fact that Skylar had to deliver the baby in the bathroom without anyone there to support her. Skylar informed her parents that she had named the baby Annabelle and claimed that the child's father was a close friend's cousin whom she dated briefly before Brandon. Crime scene investigators arrived at the Richardson home to conduct a search for the baby's remains. During the search for the baby's remains in the Richardson backyard crime scene, investigators removed weeds and brushed the ground to uncover the skeletal remains. The police were meticulous in their approach, carefully removing any debris that could hinder their investigation. Despite the challenges posed by the overgrown vegetation, they were able to uncover a significant amount of evidence. After removing the weeds and brushing the ground, the police discovered several bones, including pieces of the skull. These remains were meticulously collected and placed in small body bags to preserve any evidence. The investigators took great care to ensure that the integrity of the bones was maintained. One investigator later testified that the remains smelled. Another investigator confessed that the bones were so small that it was difficult to determine if they were collecting rock or bone. The coroner confirmed the discovery of hair and very small fingernails, but no organs or other identifiable items. After more than 5 hours of questioning, Skylar and her parents were allowed to return home. However, 6 days after the incident, the police contacted Skylar and informed her that she needed to come back again. They assured her father, Scott, that she was not in trouble. However, during the interview with Skylar, the police informed her that they had received new damaging information from the coroner's office. They claimed they had discovered more about the story than what Skylar had initially shared. The medical examiner who analyzed the remains stated that there was evidence to suggest that the baby's bones may have been burned. Skylar was bewildered when confronted with the statement that the baby was burned. She adamantly denied setting a fire, stating that she would never harm her child. The police, however, remained determined to get Skylar to admit to killing her baby girl and burning her remains to hide the evidence. In an attempt to elicit an admission, the police suggested that perhaps Skylar had tried to cremate the baby in order to keep the ashes off the premises. This suggestion only further confused Skylar, who was adamant that she did not burn the baby. However, suddenly,
Skylar changed her story and told police she did have a lighter and may have used it to try and cremate her baby's remains. Additionally, Skylar stated that there is a possibility that the baby was born alive, as she made a gurgle or a noise and possibly even heard her cry at one point. Skylar admitted to holding the newborn too tight, which may have contributed to the baby's death. During the hour-long interrogation, the police gathered sufficient evidence to arrest Skylar on a charge of reckless homicide. Their theory was that Skylar suffocated the baby. After presenting the case to a grand jury, she was eventually indicted and arrested for aggravated murder, a charge that carries a mandatory life sentence in Ohio. Skylar pleaded not guilty to the additional charges of voluntary manslaughter, abuse of a corpse, and danger to children at her arraignment. She spent the weekend in jail until her family was able to secure a $50,000 bond. Skylar found herself at the center of a media firestorm following the tragic death of her child. From the moment her name emerged, the public judged and scrutinized everything she and her family did. The constant judgment and scrutiny took a toll on their well-being, leading them to retreat into the safety of their own home. However, the threats they received made it difficult for them even to step outside. Members of the public would take pictures of them, further fueling the frenzy and adding to the immense pressure they were under. The relentless public scrutiny became unbearable, engulfing every aspect of their lives. Despite her defense attorneys believing that Skylar gave a false confession and that her infant death was not intentional, the prosecution remained steadfast in their approach. Despite mounting evidence contradicting their initial assessment, they pressed forward with their case. One of the key pieces of evidence in the prosecution's case was the initial report from the medical examiner, who stated that the remains had been burned. However, upon further examination, the medical examiner retracted her initial assessment. After carefully reviewing the baby's body, she declared that there was no evidence whatsoever of burning. Despite this new revelation, the prosecution's approach remained unchanged. They clung to Skylar's admission that she had attempted to cremate the remains, even though the evidence contradicted their theory of a burned body. This approach highlighted the state's determination to secure a conviction, regardless of the evidence. Throughout this tumultuous period, Skylar's family endured immense stress and fear. The public scrutiny and threats made their lives unbearable, and they struggled to navigate a world where every move they made was under the microscope. Skylar's defense attorneys worked tirelessly as the trial approached to defend her against the charges. Skylar's family was able to raise the $50,000 bail amount to secure her release on bond. However, as a condition of her release, she was ordered to wear the ankle bracelet to monitor her whereabouts. As a result, Skylar remained primarily confined to her home and avoided going out in public. She found herself isolated and preferred to spend most of her time with her family's dogs. Over 12 months, Skylar's life took on a different path. Her plans to attend the University of Cincinnati were put on hold as she awaited trial for the murder of her baby. The charges were serious, and the defense filed a motion to move the trial to a different county. However, the request was denied, leaving Skylar to continue facing the trial in the original jurisdiction. During this time, the weight of her circumstances weighed heavily on Skylar. She grappled with the emotional and psychological impact of the allegations against her, as well as the isolation she felt from the outside world. Spending time with her dogs provided solace and a sense of comfort. It became her main companionship and support as she awaited her trial. Skylar's family stood by her side throughout this difficult period, offering unwavering support and encouragement. They stood by her, believing in her innocence and hoping the truth would come to light. Despite the challenges she faced, Skylar remained determined to fight for her freedom. In July 2019, the state approached Skylar's defense attorney with an unexpected offer. The offer stated that if Skylar pleaded guilty to the remaining charges, which carried a sentence of 15 years, the state would withdraw the charge of aggravated murder. Skylar's parents were conflicted about this decision and wondered if she should accept the plea deal. After carefully considering the offer, Skylar decided to turn down the plea deal. This decision terrified her parents, who questioned if she made the right choice. However, they knew it was Skylar's choice, not theirs.
On September 3, 2019, Skylar went on trial for the murder of her newborn baby girl. The state began its opening statements by presenting a text message that Skylar had sent to her mother. In this message, she expressed how happy she was, stating that her belly had returned to its normal size. She added that she would never allow it to get like it was again. This message was sent just a few hours after Skylar gave birth. "I am literally speechless with how happy I am my belly is back, OMG," she texted her mother. The prosecution told the jury during the second day of Skylar's trial. During the state's opening arguments, they alleged that Skylar had sent more text messages to her mother and boyfriend less than 24 hours after she had killed her baby. These messages, according to the state, suggested that Skylar was thrilled about her baby's death and pointed to these texts as evidence that she played a role in the baby's death. In one message, Skylar texted her mom, "I'm so excited for dinner to wear something cute. Yay, my belly is back now. I am taking this opportunity to make it amazing." This message was interpreted as an attempt to hide her guilt and excitement about not having a baby anymore. The state argued that Skylar's use of the words "excited" was indicative of her pleasure in the baby's death. Additionally, the state alleged that Skylar had sent a message to her boyfriend stating, "Last night was like the worst ever, but I feel so much better this morning. I'm happy." According to the state, this message was proof that Skylar had felt relieved after the baby's death. The state asserted that Skylar had no intention whatsoever of ever having her baby. They admitted that they could not provide concrete proof that the baby was born alive. However, they presented evidence indicating that Skylar had confessed to it during an interview with the police when Skylar stated that she had heard the baby gurgle and cry. After discovering she was pregnant, the state alleged that Skylar conducted a search on the internet for "how do I get rid of a baby?" In addition, it was claimed that Skylar's mother, Kim, had informed Skylar that her life would come to an end if she became pregnant. This revelation reportedly instilled fear in Skylar. The prosecutor said, "She was determined to keep her secret. When she could conceal her daughter no longer, she took her daughter's life." On the third day of Skylar's trial, the doctor who performed the autopsy on her baby and ruled the cause of death as violent homicide took the stand to testify. However, the doctor stated that she was not able to determine whether the fractures she found on the skull of the baby occurred before or after the death of the baby. Instead, she made her opinion on the cause of the fractures based on statements made by Skylar during her police interrogation. Skylar's defense attorney challenged the doctor's findings, arguing that she may have suffered from confirmation bias. The attorney argued that the doctor had already formed an opinion and was unlikely to change it. During cross-examination, the doctor admitted that she never examined the remains of the deceased baby under a dissecting microscope. The defense attorney then asked the doctor if she consulted with an obstetrician. The doctor responded that she had not. Furthermore, the attorney asked if the doctor had looked at photos of the burial site or the backyard of Skylar's residence. The doctor again stated that she had not. Another doctor, a fetal medicine specialist, testified in the afternoon portion of Skylar's trial, mostly under examination by the prosecution. This doctor cast doubts on Skylar's baby being stillborn, stating that all she had was one screening. Given the margin of error of fundal height measurements during the third trimester of pregnancy, which the doctor said are off 60% of the time, she was probably carrying a healthy baby. The doctor added that Skylar had admitted feeling her baby moving inside of her, and a deceased baby does not move. He also cast doubt on the reports from a doctor who filed a report for the defense that said Skylar's baby likely had growth issues. During cross-examination by Skylar's attorney, the doctor was asked if the prosecution was paying him. He replied that he was given an amount of $5,000 a day because that's what it costs the practice if they have a doctor who's not there. As the prosecution presented their case against Skylar, shocking and heart-wrenching evidence unfolded in the courtroom. Among the various pieces of evidence shown, the most impactful were the pictures of the deceased baby's remains displayed on the television screen. These images left a lasting impact on Skylar, as revealed by her reactions during the trial. When the pictures of her baby's remains appeared on screen, Skylar's initial reaction was to stare straight ahead. She avoided looking at the photos, seemingly unable to bear the sight. Skylar's stoic demeanor contrasted with the previous day when she visibly trembled when the judge sat down before jury selection. When Skylar's defense attorneys presented their case, they argued that Skylar's life was far from perfect, even before the accusation of murder. They claimed that much of what the prosecution presented were half-truths, and argued that some of the texts presented in court were taken out of context. The defense argued that Skylar's frequent use of such text language did not imply that she committed the heinous crime of murdering her daughter. The defense attorneys also emphasized Skylar's mental health struggles, specifically highlighting her battle with an eating disorder since she was 12 years old. They presented evidence indicating that Skylar regularly visited a psychologist and nutritionist to address her eating disorder. To support their claims, they showed the jury pictures of Skylar depicting her at various stages of weight and appearance. These pictures included images of her looking rail-thin, as well as those where she appeared slightly heavier. According to her attorney, Skylar cradled the baby for hours while bleeding on the ground in the bathroom. They said despite her physical state, she remained steadfast in her commitment to comfort and care for the lifeless body. After enduring unimaginable pain, Skylar's attorneys said she made the decision to bury her baby in the backyard. Skylar's attorney explained to the court that Skylar had intended to notify her family about her upcoming pregnancy, but unfortunately, she never had the opportunity to do so. According to her doctor, Skylar was told that she would deliver a baby within 8 to 10 weeks. As a result, she assumed she would have enough time to attend the prom and graduate high school before addressing the situation with her mother, whom she knew would not be supportive. During the defense turn, an obstetrician testified that the baby was stillborn. The doctor argued that Skylar did not admit to cutting the cord, suggesting that it may have become detached before or during birth. The doctor also pointed out that Skylar's description of the baby's appearance was noteworthy, as she said the baby was really white. The obstetrician stated that this did not indicate a healthy newborn. He said in his experience, a newborn is usually a purple-ish color. Furthermore, the obstetrician noted that Skylar only gained 15 pounds throughout her pregnancy. He suggested that her eating disorder may have restricted the baby's development in the womb. This testimony aimed to cast doubt on the validity of Skylar's statements to the police regarding the baby's well-being. The defense's argument was that Skylar only told the police what she wanted to hear during the interrogation, and that she did not witness or engage in any harmful behavior toward the baby. They aimed to cast doubt on the credibility of her testimony and suggest that other factors may have contributed to the baby's death. Skylar Richardson's trial lasted for 1 week before the jury was sent to deliberate. After just 4 hours, the jury returned with a verdict. They acquitted her of aggravated murder, involuntary manslaughter, and child endangerment. However, she was convicted of abuse of a corpse, a felony that carried up to 1 year in prison. The judge ordered her to be held in jail until her sentencing hearing. 1 day later, her sentencing hearing took place. Skylar apologized for her actions and acknowledged the gravity of what she had done. During Skylar's sentencing hearing, the judge did not spare any leniency when he admonished Skylar for her role in the tragic loss of her baby. The judge firmly believes that if Skylar had made better decisions throughout her pregnancy, her child would still be alive today. The judge's admonishment was stern and unwavering. He expressed his disappointment in Skylar's actions and made it clear that the choices she made had severe consequences. The judge emphasized that the decisions she made led to the death of her baby. After expressing his dissatisfaction with Skylar's actions, the judge handed down a sentence of 3 years probation for abuse of a corpse. This sentence served as a reminder that Skylar's actions were morally reprehensible and against the law. In November 2020, a judge granted a request from Skylar's attorneys to terminate her probation 2 years early. During the hearing, Skylar expressed her desire to return to a normal life and stated that she no longer required the supervision of a probation officer. The judge acknowledged her progress and agreed that there was no longer a need for the probation department's resources to be invested in her case. The judge emphasized that a sentence of probation is not designed solely as punishment or rehabilitation. Instead, It provides an opportunity for individuals to demonstrate why they should not be sentenced to prison. Since her acquittal, Skylar has taken full advantage of this opportunity. She has completed 2 semesters in college and has been working part-time at the law firm that represented her. Despite being acquitted, Skylar has faced challenges in finding additional employment. According to her attorneys, she has been rejected from various job opportunities due to her probationary status. Despite these setbacks, Skylar remains determined to pursue her career goals. She has expressed interest in attending law school and becoming a public defender.
On a warm afternoon in Boynton Beach, Florida, a man named Muhammad walked into the police department with an alarming tale. He claimed that a woman named Delilah had approached him with a peculiar request. According to Muhammad, Delilah had come to him with an offer to hire him to commit murder. However, there was one crucial piece of information that Muhammad failed to provide: Delilah's last name. Despite the limited details, the Boynton Beach Police Department deemed Muhammad's story credible and initiated an investigation. After receiving the tip about a woman seeking to have her husband killed, the detectives were faced with the task of identifying the mysterious Delilah and determining who her husband was. To gather more information, they decided to use their witness, Muhammad, to set up a meeting with this woman. The detectives selected the mobile gas station as a suitable meeting location based on Muhammad's statement that Delilah lived nearby. At the mobile gas station where Muhammad and the woman agreed to meet, detectives set up several vehicles to conduct surveillance on the meeting. Before the woman arrived, the detectives prepared Muhammad on what to say to the woman. They discreetly placed a wire with a recorder on Muhammad, enabling them to overhear his conversation with the woman as it unfolded. As the detectives continued their surveillance of the mobile gas station, their attention was drawn to the interaction between Muhammad and a woman named Delilah. What caught the detectives by surprise was the appearance of the woman, who did not match the typical profile of someone who would want her husband killed. Dressed in a skirt and tank top, she appeared to be quite attractive. The attractive woman entered the car with Muhammad, who said he couldn't believe she was getting him involved in a murder for hire. Muhammad asked if it was worth getting someone killed. Delilah said yes, she couldn't file for divorce. She feared that her husband would come after her if she tried to end their marriage financially. This woman stated that when the murder of her husband took place, she planned to go to another location, such as Boca Raton, to establish an alibi. Muhammad then questioned the woman if anyone would become suspicious of her after her husband's death, to which she replied, "No, no one would point the finger at me." While the detectives listened to Muhammad's conversation with the woman who was looking to have her husband killed, they were shocked by the way this woman was acting. The way she talked so casually about hiring a hitman to murder her husband sent chills down their spines. As the detectives continued to listen to the convo Muhammad was having with this woman, she presented pics of her husband to show Muhammad what the target looked like. The detectives were taken aback by the woman's blatant disregard for the consequences of her actions. Her casual demeanor and tone made it seem as though she was discussing a mere business transaction rather than arranging for someone's death. During the conversation, the woman made a shocking confession to Muhammad. The woman revealed that she intended to provide a down payment for a hitman to murder her husband. This confession was a significant breakthrough for the detective, as it confirmed their involvement in soliciting a murder. However, the detective knew that in order to strengthen their case, they needed to gather more evidence. She proposed to Muhammad that she would take out $1,000 cash and give it to the hitman at a later time. After the woman finished her conversation with Muhammad regarding hiring a hitman to murder her husband, she returned to her vehicle and left the mobile gas station. The detectives followed the woman home to gather information on where she lived. A records check revealed that the address belonged to Dalia DiPolito, not Delilah, as previously believed. Armed with this new information, the detectives ran a background check on the vehicle Dalia used to travel to the gas station to meet with Muhammad. Doing this allowed them to obtain the registered owner's name, her husband, Mike DiPolito. To Mike and Dalia's friends, they appeared to be in love and a happy couple. The couple met when Mike was at work one day, feeling bored and searching for something to pass the time. As he browsed the internet,
He discovered a website offering escorts and decided to order one to see him. Little did he know that this decision would change his life forever. When his escort arrived, Mike was instantly captivated by her beauty. He thought she was stunning and couldn't help but feel a spark between them. Their connection was instantaneous, and they found themselves engrossed in friendly conversation. Over the next few days, Mike and Dahlia's friendship grew stronger. They saw each other again, this time spending an entire weekend together. The time together was fun, and they quickly realized that there was something more than just friendship between them. From that moment on, Mike and Dahlia became a steady couple. Mike and Dahlia's relationship took an unexpected turn a few months into dating when they found themselves browsing engagement rings at a local jewelry store. This surprising encounter sparked a conversation about marriage, a topic they had previously discussed. Intrigued by the idea of spending their lives together, Mike decided to purchase a ring for Dahlia, symbolizing his commitment to their future. Despite the fact that their relationship was progressing at a fast pace, Mike was deeply happy and in love. Before Mike met Dahlia, he had been to prison in 2001 for grand theft, fraud, and false telephone sales. He was sentenced in Broward County, Florida, 2 years after the initial offenses. At the time, Mike was using drugs and needed money, which he later admitted was no excuse for what he did. Mike was sentenced to 2 years in prison on the charges and had 28 years of probation. The court gave him so much probation with the intention of giving him time to pay back the money he owed. However, when he first came home, Mike had no idea how he would repay the loan. Determined to repay his debt, Mike got a job as a cook at a restaurant. He was earning $350 a week, which was certainly not enough to put a dent in the substantial amount he owed. Mike wanted a better financial situation to pay off his debt and secure his release from probation. A friend of Mike's offered him a job in an office just 4 blocks from his house, allowing him to transition from working as a cook to email marketing. As Mike and Dahlia started dating, Mike eventually opened up about his probation and informed Dahlia of the limitations of his situation. He explained that if he were required to leave the state, he would need to obtain permission. Dahlia, who had a strong desire to travel, expressed her desire to explore the world with Mike. Dahlia approached Mike with an offer to help him get out from under the burden of his debt. She offered to give him $91,000 if he provided the remainder, which would allow them to clear the debt and embark on the life Dahlia longed for, filled with travel. At the time, Dahlia was working as a real estate agent and was earning good money. This financial stability allowed Dahlia to assist Mike in paying off his debt and clearing his name. Mike contacted his attorney to inquire about how to handle the situation. The attorney advised Mike to gather the required funds, and he would be released from probation. Upon consulting the attorney, Dahlia and Mike agreed that placing the money in Dahlia's bank account at Bank of America would be the most convenient and safest way. He was excited because he recently got married and was paying off his probation. One day, he received a message from Dahlia stating that she had sent money to his attorney from her bank account. Mike followed up with his attorney to ask about the wire transfer status. However, to his disappointment, the attorney informed Mike that he had not yet received the funds from Dahlia. Feeling frustrated, Mike decided to wait another day before asking Dahlia again about the transfer. However, when he approached her, she insisted she had sent it. Feeling increasingly concerned, Mike decided to reach out to his attorney again. Unfortunately, the attorney reaffirmed that they still had not seen anything. Dahlia informed Mike that she had indeed sent the money to his legal counsel, but unfortunately, she did not understand the reason behind the delay or why the attorney had not yet received the funds. It was 2 days since the transaction was made, and the attorney still had not obtained the money. Mike then informed Dahlia that he would appreciate it if she could tell him where she had sent the funds. He explained that he needed the receipt to verify the details of the transaction. However, Dahlia had a different theory. She suggested that maybe the attorney had stolen the money. Dahlia told Mike she was determined to find the lost money. Meanwhile, Mike hoped he and Dahlia could move on from this misunderstanding. A supervisor of the Boynton Beach Police Department contacted undercover officer Sergeant Whitey Jean and requested his assistance. Sergeant Whitey Jean met with a detective working on the case involving Dalia DiPolito. The detective provided a synopsis of the case, informing Sergeant Whitey Jean that Dalia was seeking to hire a hitman to murder her husband. The detective explained to Sergeant Whitey Jean that Dalia was expecting a phone call from the hitman. They asked Sergeant Whitey Jean if he would play the part of the hitman and facilitate a meeting with Dalia. Sergeant Whitey Jean agreed to assist with the investigation and decided to take on the role of a hitman. Sergeant Whitey Jean, posing as a hitman, contacted Dalia and demanded an advance payment of $3,000 and the key to her house. The detective requested the key to her house as part of their plan to trick Dalia into believing that the murder would take place at her home. However, Dalia was not happy with this development and contacted Mohammed, the informant, to express her concern. During the phone conversation between Mohammed and Dalia, the detective eavesdropped and feared they might have scared her away. They feared that Dalia might change her mind and find someone else to murder her husband. On August 3, 2009, in a CVS parking lot, Dalia met with Sergeant Whitey Jean, who was undercover as a hitman. However, Dalia did not bring the money with her, which prompted Sergeant Whitey Jean to inform her that if he were going to wait to get paid until after the murder took place, she would need to give him $7,000 in cash. Sergeant Whitey Jean also mentioned that he would plan the hit on Wednesday morning. Since there were several robberies in the area, he told Dalia he planned to stage a break-in. To ensure that the assassination appeared legitimate, Sergeant Whitey Jean informed Dalia that he would make it appear as if he had broken into the house. He would then shoot Mike twice in the head. Sergeant Whitey Jean informed Dalia that he would wait a few days to contact her following the murder of her husband, as he knew that the police would be heavily monitoring her in the aftermath of such a heinous crime. However, Sergeant Whitey Jean assured Dalia that the delay was necessary to avoid suspicion and ensure everything remained covert. During his conversation with Dalia, Sergeant Whitey Jean gave her every chance to back out of the murder for hire. Dalia confidently declared that she was 5,000% certain about her decision, indicating that her mind was made up and that she had fully committed to her husband's murder. Dalia revealed to Sergeant Whitey Jean that Mike walked the dog at a specific time every morning and left the house unlocked. This information was crucial in her plan to deceive him and ensure the success of the murder. She informed Sergeant Whitey Jean that she would go to the gym at the time of the murder, promising to be absent while he entered her house. Sergeant Whitey Jean told Dalia to go to the gym by 6 a.m. and said he would go into her home at 6:30 a.m. At the end of his conversation with Dalia, Sergeant. Her sheer evilness shocked Sergeant Whitey Jean. The sergeant had encountered many people in his work, but none had the same level of viciousness as Dalia. The detective believed it was important to create a fake crime scene at Dalia and Mike's home to elicit a reaction from Dalia. On the day of the alleged hit, at around 5:30 a.m., Dalia informed Mike that she was going to the gym. Mike replied with okay, thinking it was odd, considering she had never gone to the gym before that early. However, he shrugged it off and continued with his morning routine. The detective conducted surveillance on Dalia to ensure she made her way to the gym and went inside. This evidence gave the detective the necessary confirmation to proceed with their plans. However, one crucial aspect needed to be addressed before setting everything up at Mike and Dalia's home. The detective had to notify Mike DiPolito of the situation. Approximately a half hour after Dalia went to the gym, a loud banging sound echoed through Mike and Dalia's house, causing Mike to rush to the door. To his surprise, the doorstep was crowded with several police officers. Confused and alarmed, Mike asked the officers what was happening. The detective stepped forward and informed Mike that his wife had hired what she believed to be a hitman, but in reality, the individual was an undercover cop assigned to kill him. He further explained to Mike that the entire situation was an elaborate setup orchestrated to look like a hired assassination. Mike was in a state of shock after the police at his front door informed him that his wife, Dalia, had hired a hitman to murder him. After the initial shock wore off, the detectives told him that time was of the essence, and he needed to leave the premises immediately. They proceeded to take him to the police station.
At Mike and Dahlia's home, detectives staged a crime scene by putting up crime scene tape and activating the cop car lights to create a realistic appearance of a crime committed there. Once the home was appropriately set up, a detective contacted Dahlia to inform her that the police were at her house and needed to speak with her regarding an incident involving her husband. The detective asked Dahlia to return home for questioning. After speaking with the detective, Dahlia returned home to find her house surrounded by crime scene tape and police cars everywhere. She questioned the detective about what was going on, and the detective informed her that they had received a report about a disturbance at her home. The report also stated that shots were fired, and the detective told her that a search of her house had revealed the body of her husband, Mike. The news came as a devastating blow to Dahlia. She immediately broke down in tears as the reality of her husband's death sank in. The detective, who had experience dealing with death notifications, noticed that Dahlia's reaction seemed unusual. Although she cried, the detective noticed that there were no tears. At the police station, the detective began the interview by questioning Dahlia about any potential suspects in her husband's murder. The detective's objective was to extract a confession from Dahlia that she had hired someone to kill him. The detective informed Dahlia that her husband had been shot twice in the head. Dahlia expressed her belief that Mike would never open the door to someone he did not know. She mentioned that Mike was on probation for a stock fraud conviction and had been struggling to get off probation. Dahlia claimed there had been issues in the community regarding Mike's attempts to get off probation, as people were not supportive of his impending release because of how much money he owed. She also insisted that their marriage was free from any issues. As the police interviewed Dahlia about who could have murdered her husband, unbeknownst to Dahlia, Mike stood watching in another room. The detective interviewing Dahlia informed her that they were going to get down to business and revealed that they knew the truth behind her husband's murder. They then went on to bring in Sergeant Whitey Jean, who was handcuffed, asked Dahlia if she knew him or if she had seen him before. Dahlia firmly denied having any knowledge of or ever having seen Sergeant Whitey Jean before. After Sergeant Whitey Jean was let out of the room, the detective informed Dahlia that she was being arrested for solicitation of murder. The detective also revealed that the man she had hired to murder her husband was, in fact, an undercover police officer. Dahlia was arrested. While Dahlia was in custody, the police decided to give Mike, Dahlia's husband, who she attempted to have killed, a chance to see her. When Dahlia saw him, she tried to call him over. However, Mike refused, stating that he couldn't fix this for her in his mind. He wanted her to admit to attempting to have him killed, but Dahlia remained steadfast in her denial. On April 26, 2011, Dahlia DiPolito's trial took place at a Palm Beach County courthouse. The charges were related to Dahlia's alleged attempt to solicit the murder of her husband, Mike. During the trial, Mike took the stand to testify against Dahlia. His testimony lasted for 3 days. Dahlia's defense argued that the entire plan to murder Mike was actually a publicity stunt for a reality television show. According to her, Mike had agreed to participate in the television show and had orchestrated the entire plot. However, Mike denied having any knowledge of or involvement in this plan. During his testimony, Mike stated that he had no interest in being on a reality show. He refuted Dahlia's claims and emphasized that he would never waste his money or put himself in danger for such a purpose. Mike also said that he had no prior knowledge or involvement in Dahlia's alleged plot to have him killed. After the defense and prosecution rested their cases, the jury deliberated. Finally, after several hours of careful consideration, they returned with a guilty verdict for Dahlia on charges of solicitation to commit first-degree murder with a firearm. The courtroom erupted with gasps and murmurs as the verdict was read. Mike, who was present throughout the trial, felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, he was relieved to hear that Dahlia would serve a 20-year prison sentence for her crimes. It was a just outcome, considering the severity of her actions. However, there was also a sense of closure for Mike. He was finally able to move on with his life, knowing that justice had been served. However, after Dahlia was found guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder with a firearm, her attorneys appealed, claiming that the jury verdict was tainted by one juror's remark
that Dahlia tried to poison Mike's drink from Starbucks. However, this remark never came into evidence during the trial, and the jury was only allowed to assess the evidence presented in the courtroom. The appellate court reversed Dahlia's conviction, ruling that she was entitled to a new trial. Mike couldn't believe there was going to be a second trial for Dahlia after she was convicted for trying to have him killed. As the state went into the second trial in December 2016, they were confident in the facts that proved Dahlia solicited her husband's murder. However, much to the disappointment of the state, the jurors reached a hung jury. The judge then declared a mistrial. Dahlia Dippolito faced her third trial in June 2017. After the court proceedings, the jury finally reached a verdict within 90 minutes, finding Dahlia guilty and sentencing her to 16 years in prison. In September 2019, the Florida Supreme Court rejected, without comment, a request from Dahlia Dippolito for the court to review her 2017 conviction. After her conviction, Dahlia's defense team attempted to have their case heard before the U.S. Supreme Court. However, in February 2020, the court declined to hear the case. Dahlia Dippolito's attorney expressed to the media that the ongoing legal battle has not diminished their determination to overturn Dahlia's conviction. They revealed that they plan to file a motion with a federal judge requesting the review of the third trial for constitutional violations on behalf of Dahlia. The attorney said this would be their last chance to secure a new trial for Dahlia. Despite serving her sentence, the attorney said that Dahlia had become highly respected in jail due to her unwavering faith. They claimed that Dahlia leads a Bible study group behind bars, which has garnered her praise from fellow inmates. Before Dahlia went to prison, she had a young son who visits her regularly. However, due to the circumstances, her son is currently living with his grandmother until Dahlia finishes her sentence. This separation has been very difficult for Dahlia, as she deeply misses being with her son, said her attorney.